And I'm Guy. Outrage or color the revolution in Minnesota? I think a bit of both. We're going to get into all that as well as the Alberta separatist movement once we get into geopolitics and our Canadian section. Thank you to all the new subscribers from Canada. Our Alberta video actually did really well, and I'm glad to hear it because the comments on that thing, it really looks like Alberta will separate. I sure hope so.
But also, before we start, thank you so much for being here. And just a reminder for those of you who haven't subscribed yet, thank you so much for the ones that have, but please do subscribe. It really does help us out a lot. And we also read all your comments both here on YouTube and on our UMBLE. So make sure to leave them at the end of each section. We go through all of them and reply to all of them.
Well, maybe let's say hi to Nan and see what they're cooking now.
Nan says, good afternoon. So good afternoon, Nan. Let us know if or what you're cooking. And Nan also says, I heard this Alex Freddy guy was part of a militant signal chat that was planning violent confrontations. What you guys got on that? Well, I talked about that on Monday, I think, when we had our kind of blog debate, where I said that it had been confirmed that he was part of the signal chat and that that was more evidence to the fact that he was there to cause violence and disturbance and interfering with federal law enforcement.
Yeah, I think on Monday it did not look good. I still stand by everything I said on Monday. I don't want to see the government overreach, and I do know the midterms are coming up. That being said, every day that goes by, more comes out about this guy. We got a couple videos to lead off the show on how this guy was kicking off taillights and things like that. What are you doing?
My mic is someone said it. Thank you so much to Anonymous for letting me know that my mic is not. Now the guy has to fix it because he's the producer. Oh, I guess. Well, you can hear me if I yell.
Unplug your.
I don't know why it's not working. You want me to fix it and you do it? Oh, there. I think I'm back. Am I back?
Okay, hopefully the level's good.
Yes. Thank you so much to Anonymous for letting us know, and hopefully now let us know if it works now.
The other day we didn't catch it till like halfway through the show, so that's fantastic. Oh God, what was I saying? Oh, I was saying on Monday, everything that had come out at that point, it did not look good the way ICE was interacting. But the more and more that comes out about not only this guy, but a lot of the protesters, I mean, this thing looks coordinated like a color revolution. It looks like it's being funded not only by probably the Democratic Party, but foreign governments. A lot of money is coming out of Canada. And it's strange because Canada is telling the United States to stop interfering in their politics, like the Alberta separatist movement. But it looks like money's coming from Canada.
Exactly.
Okay,
and
let's get into
also thank you to Nam for letting us know about the microphone, and now it works. So thank you so much. I just want a confirmation that it worked. Okay, well, let's actually get into the breaking news, which is, again, Minnesota still.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
And yes, more and more stuff coming out about Alex Preddy, Ryan Saavedra, and this video came out a few days ago, but before we did our last show.
It's funny because it came out just before the last show, and I hadn't seen it, and I think Sean, one of our viewers, had mentioned it. Now that I had a chance to see it, I mean, this completely changes the perspective of who this guy was, why he was there. They try to say this was AI. They had no way to excuse his behavior. The problem is there's multiple angles coming out, so it's definitely not AI. We're going to show that. Let's get into it.
And also the BBC confirmed it. Ryan Saavedra says, quote, BBC obtains footage from January 13th of a man they say is Alex Preddy. Video appears to show him spitting at the federal law enforcement and attacking their vehicle, kicking out the taillight of the officer's vehicle.
This is a moment the news movement filmed on January 13th in Minneapolis, showing a man who appears to be Alex Preddy interacting with federal immigration agents 11 days before Border Patrol shot and killed him. Our footage was analyzed by the BBC, whose facial recognition technology confirmed his identity to a 97% degree of accuracy. On the morning of January 13th,
right there.
Our team received a tip that federal agents were blocking a street at the corner of East 36 and Park Avenue in Minneapolis. We arrived around 10:15 a.m.
Well, federal officers were not blocking the street. They were being blocked from doing their operations.
Well, it's also very strange because he used to be a nurse, and it seems like a lot of people are making TikToks that are in the nursing field, and they seem radicalized.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a field dominated by women. We just talked about the feminization of society, and also dominated by the left, unfortunately.
Observers shouting at the agents as they walked back to their vehicles. When they started driving away, the man kicked their taillight. An agent then got out of the vehicle, grabbed him, and pushed him to the ground. During the altercation, agents fired tear gas and pepper balls into the crowd. They continued to hold the man down before they retreat, and he walks away.
And they let him go.
The man in our footage
you
is
can
wearing-
leave it there. And they let him go because I don't think they were necessarily prepared to get out of the car for that confrontation. More and more people started kind of surrounding him. They said, just let it be and let it go. They should have arrested him right then and there because he wouldn't have been on the scene the next time there was an
That would have
incident.
saved his life.
Yeah.
Literally. And we also saw in that video, I mean, I didn't go frame by frame. I'm sure you have seen it, but you can see that he was already concealed carrying then as well. And
Yeah.
we are seeing the kinds of actions that he was taking while carrying concealed. in a
Well, I still
concealed
think
manner.
I still think he had the right to conceal carry. I still believe in the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, but this does not look good. It's a lot harder to paint him as a martyr the way they were the first few days. So
But I will continue to say, yes, you do have a right to conceal carry at a protest. You don't have a right to do so while
committing a crime.
committing a crime or interfering with federal law enforcement or any law enforcement.
Yeah, I agree
for
with that.
matter,
But you,
which is what he was doing.
you are allowed to. I still stand by everything I said, and I don't want a police state to come. I'm glad to see the Trump administration is kind of backing off here, trying to re-coordinate, go to other states where they have cooperation. They're trying to sign a deal currently with the governor of Minnesota so they can get more cooperation. So they have to have less ICE agents on the ground and actually get more people out of that state.
Okay, but we do have another angle as well that came out from End Wokeness, quote, new angle of Alex Preddy rioting. And here he is actually, telling the officers themselves to come get him and come and try to attack him and stuff like that. And excellent. He's yelling. He's saying effing put pepper spray on me, effing assault me.
Well,
MFer.
leave it there for a sec. We'll continue to play the video, but it's absolutely crazy. They were trying to say this was AI, and they were trying to mass flag anybody that had posted this video. They did not want this to get out. Now that it's out, it's kind of destroying their second martyr, because the first martyr they had, the lady in the car, it was extremely hard to pose that in any other way than she assaulted a cop with a deadly weapon, that being a vehicle.
And these also came out after a lot of both celebrities, but also political commentators on mainstream news had already eulogized him as this great nurse and person that cared for everybody. And then this comes out and it completely destroyed the narrative that they were trying really hard to paint.
Well, it's a little crazy because they're still trying to kind of paint him as a martyr, holier than thou. Even after this video came out, we're going to have a clip of a couple of people in a few minutes, but I can't believe they're trying to stick to this line.
Then he spits. And then kicking the tip.
And okay, you can leave it there. And I guess this is what you're going to get when you treat them nice and let them go and you don't actually arrest them.
And that's
it
the
kind of came back to haunt them. They should maybe have a bit of a harder hand when people do actually destroy or begin to destroy a police vehicle.
And
That
that's what I was
crazy.
saying. And he got into a confrontation with police while having a deadly weapon, and that escalates even the charges if he had been arrested and charged for that initial confrontation. There were also reports that he broke a rib, but I wasn't sure if it was during that or if he actually did break a rib or if that was just
Yeah, no, he
conjecture.
broke a rib during that incident that had been confirmed. That being said, they ended up letting him go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and he could have completely been arrested for a felony there. I'd gladly take a rib to
Several.
avoid a felony. The fact that he didn't learn a lesson there shows that he's been radicalized. He had a divorce just a few months previous. I think that was the beginning of his radicalization. There was incidents at the hospital. That's why he was let go. He was approaching his 40s, just got divorced, lost his job, and I think he felt this was the situation he could make a difference in.
But I think it also goes to show intent, and shows intent both there and before at the hospital, the reasons why he got fired, he was divorced. There's a lot more information that point to the fact that he was not there to just peacefully protest.
Well, and I feel like an asshole again. I mean, I was defending Candace Owens for the longest time. I had to apologize for that. Now I was defending this guy on Monday and Wednesday's episode until this video came out. There's no more defending him. I'll still defend his right to have a gun and have freedom of speech, just because if the Democrats get in 2028, I don't want Republicans to lose those rights now by taking the rights away from the left.
Mm-hmm. But as always, they are not always right. So there we go. And I did want to show this because today on Tim Pool's culture war debate thing he has on Fridays, Andrew Branca was there. I knew about him and started following him from all the way back when, what's his name?
Well, I haven't watched this yet. I don't really like Andrew Branca's takes that have been coming out so far on this situation. I did like him before because he was covering the Johnny Depp trial, and that's kind of where he got big.
And before also with the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. But yes, Timcast News says, Branca explains why the Alex Preddy case isn't controversial legally, even if people want it to be. Officers gave lawful orders, the woman refused, the force was escalated appropriately, and then Preddy made physical contact with an officer beforehand, which is all things I said on Monday.
A lot to break down in the Alex Preddy circumstance, especially with the new video that went viral, where we now know that he was actually violent and was screaming, assault me, MFer. But starting from the first video, give us your assessments on this use of force circumstance.
Yeah, every bit of force the officers used from beginning to end was lawful in that video. From the moment where they're ordering that woman.
And I don't know if we mentioned, he is a lawyer. That's why they're asking for his
He's a
legal,
self-defense lawyer.
That's why they're asking for his legal analysis here.
Back, I'll call her white coat, right? You see the CBP officer verbally ordering her to create more space from the active law enforcement action they're engaged in. She disobeys that order. She stops. He's telling her, get on the sidewalk. She doesn't get on the sidewalk. Well, if they don't obey your verbal lawful orders, you get to escalate to non-deadly force. So he shoves her onto the sidewalk. That's permissible. And then Preddy comes in and makes contact with him. The moment he does that, he's committed interference with contact, which is a federal felony, good for 8 years in prison.
Wow.
It doesn't have to qualify as an assault, an intent to harm. It just has to be interference with contact. Now Preddy has committed an 8-year federal felony in the presence of all those officers. Of course, they're going to make an arrest. And it was an act of violence on one of their fellow officers. So they move in now to make the arrest. They go hands-on, they grab him, they get him on the ground, try to get him on the ground. And now he's violently resisting arrest. Not only is that a resisting arrest charge, it's continuing acts of interference with federal law enforcement with contact. Then they hear the shouts of gun, 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 gun. And by the way, a lot of people say the officer in the green shirt who extends his, like they say, well, he was looking right there. He was looking at the gun as it was taken off his hip, so he knew he didn't have the. That's not how the human eye works.
Yeah.
The human eye is not like a photograph where everything's in focus at the same time, and no matter what you look at, it's in focus. The human eye, when you look at one object, I look at you, you're in focus. But Tim's not. They're not. Other things aren't. And I could be looking over Tim's shoulder at that fake tree behind him, and that tree's in focus, but Tim's not, even though my eyes are aligned with him. I suspect that officer was actually looking over Preddy's shoulder because his hands would have been in front of him. And the hands are normally what's the threat. You want to see what's going on with the suspect's hand.
And what did he have in his hand?
Didn't even see the gun coming off the hip.
What did he have in his hand, Preddy?
Well, he had an object in his hand. We don't know what it was. It could have been his phone. It could have been another magazine.
It was a phone, but as far as the officer can tell, a series of events occurred where they hear gun, gun, gun.
1 more minute.
Right.
Preddy reaches around where the holster was,
Yep.
spins
Okay,
around
we can
holding a
kind of
black
leave it
object.
there.
and
Well,
a
no,
shot
because this is
rings
the
out.
most important bit.
A shot was fired, and we believe it may have been the SIG defective
320.
discharged or something. Right. Some have said that it was an agent panic shooting the ground. We don't know. But if you're a law enforcement officer, someone is actively resisting arrest, someone yells gun, 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 a shot rings out as he spins around with a black object. You have a 1/10 of a second to decide whether or not you're going to wait to see if he shoots and kills you,
right,
or to neutralize the threat.
Yep. You'll get shot 999 times out of 1,000 because you've created a reasonable perception, maybe not reality, right? We know he didn't actually have a gun in his hand. But these officers aren't required to make perfect decisions in self-defense. They're required to make reasonable.
Okay. And
Actually,
that was
you're
the kind of-
Well, but that was the part I wanted to get to, that they need to make reasonable decisions.
Yeah.
And the whole circumstance led to the reasonable decision of we might get injured, we don't know what's going
Well,
on.
I already said on Monday.
Neutralize the threat.
I already said on Monday I didn't think he was going to be convicted on anything. I really don't think charges should be brought in that situation. That being said, it doesn't look good. He still take 5 shots to the back. The cop is the one that took the gun. The cop's the one that misfired the gun. I still don't like the situation that happened. That being said, he did look like a radical now after all the information that kind of came out. This does look like a color revolution when we start connecting the lines of money coming into this from foreign governments and from, I'm guessing, the Democratic Party itself.
And the foreign government's part is the most worrying and worrisome. And I think the one that the administration, FBI, someone should be looking into. But they do seem to be slow rolling all of this. I don't know if they're doing it on purpose so that the things kind of get even worse before they actually do something else, or if the retreat is actually like an actual tactical retreat and not just to let them go crazier and then they can come in again.
Well, it looks like they're prepping to go into California. At least that's kind of the rumors that are out there. And if they are doing that, I actually like Sean's analysis from the last show, which was one of our viewers. And he was saying maybe they're doing this before the summertime, getting everybody to kind of expose themselves in these violent protests, getting information on who these people are from signal chats through AI and take the worst offenders out. So when this No King style protest comes in the summertime, and you better believe it's coming in the summertime just before the midterms, they're going to take the most radicals out beforehand.
And we did see today in Minnesota, way more protests started escalating. Today's Friday, so a lot of people were either able to not go to work, the few that do have a job, or they were able to start protesting after. And there's also more movements and more calls to, for example, do a strike if you do have a job, or to continue throughout the weekend. So we'll see if other cities, if other states will also join in the efforts.
Yeah, I mean, we do.
And I would say California probably.
We cover a lot of Canadian politics on this channel. That being said, a lot of money has been rolling in from Canada. And if you look at the situation in depth, kind of like we do, I mean, I follow the news every day. Canada's in a really bad situation. 30% of their provinces currently want to separate. Later this year, Alberta is going to have a separatist vote. It looks like it's going to go the way of Alberta. I think Canada is going to try not to recognize that vote. If Donald Trump does, it's going to be almost impossible for them to stop Alberta from separating at that point, considering it's in the Constitution of Canada. They're allowed to take those votes. Also, they have to do this tariff renegotiation. They're buddying up to China. There's just a lot of ways that Canada has no leverage to negotiate with the United States. So funneling money through NGOs would make complete sense. If Trump loses the midterms, that's their way to they get leverage in the negotiations, whether it's tariffs or the separatist movement.
But it could also backfire on them even more, because if they are interfering and they are creating almost insurrection within a different country, I mean, that's not going to look good.
Yeah, but they're using third-party NGOs and groups within Canada, but you can see the money is coming out of Canada. But who is the biggest beneficiary of this? It's actually the Canadian government.
But as you mentioned, we will and probably will continue to see fights in the streets. And Gunther Eagleman says, quote, Tim Pool, again, drops a heavy warning on Minnesota. People are getting radicalized to fight in the streets. And again, at least I don't think it's just the people themselves deciding, but there is a whole machinery behind the decisions that these people are taking.
Trump did pull back, and I think Homan did state that the reason he's here is not because things have been going fairly well, but hopefully now there's going to be some negotiations where things can calm down. I think the terrifying thing about Minnesota, the situation with Preddy, the situation with Renee Good, is that we're looking at a leftist base in this country that are being radicalized. They're being told that ICE are Nazis, they're Gestapo, they're kidnapping children, when none of this is true. It's all exaggerated, and it's resulting in panic. It's resulting in people like Preddy, who otherwise seemed like a good dude. I know a lot of people, they're polarized on this. They want to say either he was, deranged or whatever. I mean, look, the guy was a nurse. He worked for the VA. I don't think he was an evil guy, but he's radicalized. He shows up, he's spitting on cops, he's kicking their car, instigating these fights, and it results in these unfortunate circumstances I don't think anybody wanted to see happen. So it does seem like it's good that Trump is sending in Homan's toning things down a bit. My concern is that there's a bloodlust that's not going to be satisfied when Homan comes in and Trump talks with Waltz. Protesters went to Tim Waltz's office angry that he would even negotiate. So how we get the temperature down in this country without any kind of serious escalation, I honestly don't know. Even Tim Waltz asked the question today, is this Fort Sumter? And I certainly hope it's not.
Okay, and usually I don't like milquetoast Tim. You're a big fan.
I do
you're,
like
You're a big fan of Tim, but I thought his take was absolutely excellent. I'm the one that had picked that particular clip, and it seems to echo a lot of what I was saying. And I do like the fact that Holman was brought in and that he is taking a much different approach, a much more strategic approach that I think the more mainstream or the moderates are going to be much more accepting of, but is still going to get results when it comes to actually getting immigrants out of the state.
But
Illegal immigrants.
yeah, and I think at the beginning he was saying, well, I don't think he was a bad guy, but he was radicalized. But at what point of a person being radicalized and then committing either crimes or doing terrible things, does that person turn evil? That's a philosophical question if you want to answer it in the comments. But
Well, I don't know if he was evil. Definitely
because
misguided.
they do have to start going after these people.
Definitely misguided, and he had a series of bad events that happened in his life, from losing a job, which wasn't just a job, but was a career, having a divorce from his wife, and then this situation. Maybe he was blaming it on the administration. I know when we were living in Canada before we left, Trudeau was in office, and I did place a lot of stuff on Trudeau. I absolutely
But is that an
hated him.
excuse to go and interfere in, federal operations or try to, start fights with, Border Patrol or with ICE?
No, absolutely not. But I'm saying he's not necessarily evil. I'm just saying he was been radicalized.
But are radicalized people that commit evil things evil themselves?
I don't think he was committing evil things there. He didn't do anything dramatically evil. He kicked the cop car. That's not
Yes,
evil.
but if you go down the line, he's technically protecting people that have done horrible things in both Minnesota, but in the country in general, by blocking ICE enforcement and CBP enforcement.
You're connecting too many dots and going
Well, I
too
think
far.
those are the dots that need to be connected. And people have to stop feeling sorry for the people that are causing mayhem, be it in Mexico, in the U.S., in Canada, because that's what happens with the right. The right just sits there milquetoastedly and says, okay, well, yes, they're crazy, but what are we going to do? Well, you do have to do something or the things will continue to escalate.
I'm not connecting that he's an absolute evil guy. I think he's a guy that a lot of things went wrong in his life. He was radicalized, and then he went out to Minnesota, and the whole situation didn't end very well, not for ICE and not for him.
Well, he wasn't very smart. You'll grant me that
Okay,
one.
let's go into the next.
And let's look at somebody that also isn't very smart. And funnily enough, this, as she was talking, this clip was concurrent with the newer clips that we showed at the beginning of the show coming out. But Ana Navarro, missing part of her brain, I'm pretty sure. But Maze Moore says last night on CNN, Ana Navarro said that Alex Preddy was a perfect guy. And that's a problem. With the way the left has been eulogizing him and making him into an angel, it's completely a false narrative that has fallen apart, but they continue to believe it, unfortunately.
They chose to, they killed the wrong guy. Right? Because this is like the perfect guy. Alex Preddy is the guy you would want to date your daughter. The guy you would want your son to grow up to be, a decent human being who was serving humanity, serving sick veterans, who is, there's nothing that has been said about that man that isn't wonderful. And so they can't malign him. They can't malign him because we have the videos. They chose to.
Well, he was so perfect, they had to AI his image because he did not look, he probably looked too Jewish for the left to have as a martyr. It's absolutely ridiculous. They're AIing his photo. They're making him into a martyr. When the actual videos come out of what happened the week before, they're trying to claim these were AIs and absolutely berate anybody that's posting these videos and trying to get him taken down.
And yeah, the other side can't malign him because he maligned himself by the actions that he took, not just that day, but previous days, and the involvement he had in the planning and escalation of attacks on federal law enforcement.
Yeah, that being said, be very careful when situations like this happen. We don't want it to be turned into a police state or First or Second Amendment rights to be stripped from the broad public in order to strip it from the left.
But I also think the libertarians are a little bit too jumpy on that. And there's a difference between actually enforcing the laws that are already within the books and that the people actually voted for, and escalating to the point where you're saying they're going to take away all our rights. Because your rights will get taken away if you don't also enforce them and enforce the law that the people voted for.
Well, I disagree. I like the libertarians' point of view here because it's not necessarily, they're not just picking a camp. That's their honest opinion, and they'll justify it through their logic and through their debate. Dave Smith has done a good job on this. I'm not necessarily in that camp after seeing that video of Preddy a week ago. That being said, I respect their opinion because they're not just in a camp here. You see a lot of right-wingers just jumping to the right-wing camp, trying to call this guy evil and everything and everything
I didn't
else.
call him evil. I said that the actions that he had taken, at what point does the actions that you're taking and the things that you're defending actually turn you evil?
Well, what I'm saying is right-wingers are trying to call him evil. Left-wing's trying to call him a saint. I like the libertarian view. I quite often am sympathetic to the libertarian view, although I do see the flaws in the ideology. We've kind of gone through that in the past.
Let's continue. From Right Angle News Network, quote, federal agents are now moving through the interior of Minnesota, performing door knock checks while being largely ignored by agitators after numerous anti-ICE
That's been going off all day. Don't worry about it.
signal chats were discovered, being led by multiple Minnesota Democrat state officials. Sorry, I heard an alarm and I didn't know what it was. I mean, it is pretty mundane if there's now people screaming and yelling at you.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And this is the new strategy coming in from Tom Holman. I like it. I think it's the right way to do. I think there's other strategic things you can do. You see they're leaving letters and notes in the door. If that person lives there, they can also go to their employers and start adding reward bonuses, stuff like this.
And as it was mentioned there, after the signal chats were exposed by Cam Higbee and by others, and they infiltrated these networks of people that were organizing, getting license plates, actually chasing down ICE and CBP officers to track their location and impede their movements, it's become a bigger story. And that is how we're seeing a lot of where the money is coming from, what the ideology and the actual tactical planning that has gone into all of this is. So let's see Glenn Beck and what he says. Glenn Beck says, average Americans like Data Republican Cam Higbee and Ryan Mauro and many more have done amazing work exposing the riot network in Minnesota. But what about the federal government? Where's the NSA? Why do we give so much of our freedom and hard-earned cash under the Patriot Act when we're still the ones exposing the actual insurrectionists?
Yeah, and I have had a problem with the Patriot Act since 9/11, and George Bush kind of brought that in, expanding that or doing more with it or using the NSA to investigate American citizens. I guess if it's on the book, then it's legal to do. I do not want to see these things expanded. I do not want to see the United States turned into a police state. I understand these things can help in a situation like this, and I do want to see illegal immigrants exited from the country. That being said, I don't want it to turn into a police state and us to lose basic freedoms of privacy, freedom of speech, and gun rights.
But at the same time, a lot of these networks also have international, and not all of them are American citizens. So, I mean, you could go use that angle without going into the American citizens, but those that are both supporting and joining these groups being not American citizens.
Well, and you're completely right. Use the international angle, use the NSA, use the CIA for this international money that's coming in, because there's a lot of it. The problem you're going to have here is a lot of these countries like Canada, like the EU, typically cooperate with their intelligence agency. As of late, they haven't been cooperating as much. And on this situation, if things connect it back to their governments, they're definitely not going to cooperate. Or if they do cooperate, it's going to be false flags or false information they're giving to them.
It's people like you. It's normal people who have a skill. Data Republican is just a mole, man. She just knows how to find stuff. Cam Higbee seems to be the same kind of person. Just goes in and knows how to find stuff and is exposing all of it. And you have people, Ryan Morrow doing the same thing. With us yesterday, we exposed a big thing that he found as well in his investigation. So a lot of things are happening. Here is the other thing that I want to point out. The federal government, Donald Trump, just issued a statement today asking for certain things and saying there's no quarter on this. You are going to do these things, and that is enforce the federal law. You have to turn these criminal aliens over. He is investigating, FBI is investigating, et cetera, et cetera. But so far, everything that has been found by people like Cam Higbee.
Okay. And that's good. And
I mean, good on them for finding it and for being able to know how to get in there. But where was the FBI and where was all the security apparatus that the U.S. has built over the years, which have been silent? What happened with declaring Antifa a terrorist organization? Nothing.
Well, also, I'll go back to my original theory with Candace. I think they're all working with or hand in hand with intelligence agencies, especially a lot of people in the social media sphere that are much bigger. I think a lot of this information is kind of coming out probably from the FBI, CIA, and stuff, and they want to bring it to the public, but they want an in-between to do it.
Maybe, or they're just incompetent.
I doubt that they're that incompetent. Yeah.
Okay.
Because we also seen what happened with Minnesota with, oh God, what was the kid's name that was doing the investigation?
Nick Shirley.
Nick Shirley, yeah. He had a go-between that was funneling him information too. And I had suspected that he was from the government. And I don't see anything wrong with that. But that being said, we have to realize a lot of this information is being leaked out from the government. Typically, it's leaked out to the New York Times or mainstream media. But the Trump administration, I think, trust independent media a lot more, and the independent media doesn't want to lose.
Good.
Independent media doesn't want to lose credibility here, so they're just saying
Maybe
anonymous sources are giving it to them.
But we also do see what happens when the actual enforcement is able to happen. Because in Texas, Governor Eagleman says Texas is single-handedly delivering 25% of all daily ICE arrests nationwide. Zero riots, zero chaos, just straight-up cooperation. There have been a few protests here and there in Texas, but not to the extent that we're seeing elsewhere.
January 1st, the date of a new era of cooperation with federal immigration authorities. It has become mandatory in the Lone Star State. Under provisions of Senate Bill 8, sheriff's offices in every Texas county must allow trained deputies to determine whether inmates are living here illegally. Panel, the measure provides state dollars to fund the local officers involved with immigration status evaluation. All right, sheriffs have until December 31st to sign a formal agreement with the feds or face legal action from the Texas Attorney General. January 1st.
Yeah, and I really wish this cooperation was happening nationwide. It's the 6 sanctuary states that just won't cooperate, and they absolutely love having illegals in their state because when the census comes around, that gives them more power and more seats in the House and the Senate. And that's what a big issue here. If Trump only goes into the states that are going to cooperate, which is the red states, the census is dramatically going to change, not only because illegals are going to be deported from those states, but they're going to flee from those states and they're going to flee to sanctuary states. So when they do the next census, the population is going to be a lot higher. He's kind of caught in a catch-22 here. I hope he's playing 4D chess. I hope he's kind of flooding them out of the zone, getting identities through AI, getting identities through these signal groups. Maybe he's going to do the same thing in California. That will kind of avoid another summer of love.
Hopefully, but we did see an almost, again, government shutdown over all the ICE operations and all the ICE enforcement, but it seems like it might have been averted. Marianoffel says, quote, Trump and Schumer nearing a deal on new ICE restrictions to avert a government shutdown. The agreement would ban masks, require body cameras, and halt random sweeps and warrantless arrests. After weeks of chaos in Minneapolis, Trump is reportedly cutting a deal with Democrats. That's a shift nobody saw coming. I don't love the banning masks part of it, but requiring body cameras, I think we continue to say that that was very important, and that would clarify a lot of the situations and circumstances we've seen.
Well, technically, I would agree with all this. I can even go through the banning masks because if it was on the other side and the Democrats get in 2028, I don't want them wearing masks when they're trying to arrest people and I can't even really tell if they're officers. But body cameras, 100%. We've said on the show time and time again, every agency, every officer should have probably 2 body cams, 2 audios in case one goes out. You should never be able to turn it off. Can you bring that article back up?
I just closed it.
Okay, never mind. The other one was warrantless searches. I completely agree.
Arrests, yeah, no warrantless searches.
And I agree with those as well. So if that's a compromise, I'm all for it. And I think that protects rights of citizens in general. Even though I'm all for Trump getting rid of illegal immigrants, I'm also for protecting the rights of citizens. And that's been a big concern of mine as of recent.
But the thing with the masks thing that I do take issue with is we've seen the left trying to dox and follow and the families of also ICE agents and CBP officers. And the right never really did that, even when the U.S. government got a bit tyrannical and started also trying to arrest people for praying, for example, or during the bad times of 2020. So the difference there is it's only one side that actually benefits from not having masks on agents.
Yeah, but a lot of people forget under the Biden administration, they were trying to make a national police force. They ended up failing, and then he lost the election. But they were trying to do it out of Washington, D.C. They were trying to nationalize a police force out of Washington, D.C. that could go around the whole country. And MAGA supporters were classified as domestic terrorists on a list. So technically they could have gone after them. I wouldn't have wanted that police force to be masked if they did. And in 2028, if Newsom does get in, like it wouldn't be beyond the pale to think he's going to do something like that.
Continuing on, also from Right Angle News Network, quote, conservatives are now calling on President Trump to sue Canadian broadcast network CTV. That is from where we're from, after a political commentator, Kathleen Monk, went on air and claimed Trump is kidnapping and ending his own citizens instead of lowering prices. And this is a rhetoric we continue to see, and this is almost all the news, at least mainstream news, that Canadians get. So it is no wonder why there is so much TDS within Canada.
This isn't just Canada. I would say Canada is late to the show. The European news and the UK news, because I gather stories for this, it has so much TDS and they don't have any leverage to kind of push back. They really want these protests to become something more. Their politicians are campaigning off of this. Their news organizations are really trying to hit Trump because they know this is kind of a weak spot, at least right now.
Americans are watching as President Trump chooses to kidnap and kill his own citizens as opposed to lowering prices. Canadians are watching that in horror and want our government to chart a new path and a new way forward. Americans.
Instead of trying to change prices, he has inflation under control, especially when you compare it to Canada. Next week, we got a series of Canadian stories coming out. One is particularly on price and food inflation in Canada, which is the highest in G7. This is confession through projection on her part. Canada is going through one of the biggest inflation that has happened in that country in recent times. Mark Carney ran on the fact, judge me by my food prices. Well, if we're to judge you by your food prices, it's time to get you out of office.
And with the TDS, et cetera, that is happening in Canada, we're also seeing that this misinformation also leads to probably a lot of the funneling of money that is going from Canada to these protests. And that's terrifying. But before we move to the next section, I will read some comments because we did get some. Non says, crazy. And yes, all of it. Non also says, seems like we might start seeing more of this type of thing. Who was this guy really? And that is my question. Like, how involved was he? How long was he involved for? Why did he get divorced, for example? I mean, not that we are owed any of his backstory, but I think a lot of these people are in the same wavelength. And how do you defeat it if you don't understand the wavelength they're in?
Well, a lot of information is trickling out about him at his job and a lot of the higher ups at the hospital potentially making statements. Now, they haven't been confirmed, so I didn't want to bring it on the show quite yet, especially because the way the story has been developing. The mainstream media is completely denying this, saying any reports of negative negative reports coming from his bosses from the hospital are absolutely fake news. That's the mainstream media saying that. So I'm going to wait, but I have a feeling there's going to be some statements kind of coming out from coworkers that worked with him.
Maybe. And Non says, yeah, Rittenhouse, double standards from both sides. LOL, the liberals are arguing for gun rights and Israel First conservatives screaming to limit gun rights.
Yeah, definitely don't limit gun rights. I've made that clear here. And Kyle Rittenhouse was completely justified. They reached out his gun. The other gentleman actually had a gun and was trying to shoot at him. He exercised a lot of restraint in that situation. I thought this gentleman, Pretty, exercised a lot of restraint by not pulling the gun as well. He did not pull the gun. I don't want to see gun rights taken in any way, shape, or form. I'm a little bit horrified that conservatives are calling to limit gun rights because
I don't think it's a call to limit gun rights.
I've watched them.
It's a call for actual proper enforcement of legally versus not legally.
That's called legaling. That's exactly how you limit gun rights.
How?
You can
By saying you have a responsibility as someone that has a concealed carry permit to not get involved in a police confrontation, because then it becomes an armed police confrontation.
It's called
That's logic.
It's called open carry state. Mm-hmm. In an open carry state, it's very broad gun laws. As soon as you start,
it's not that broad. The thing is, you never have a legal right to get into an armed confrontation with a police officer.
He wasn't in an armed confrontation.
He was by having a gun. That's armed.
No, he didn't pull it.
No, but under the state's statutes and laws for concealed carry permits, that's within the statutes.
Okay, we'll agree.
That's the thing.
I don't want to see gun rights limited, and I see a lot of
I'm not saying
conservatives like you.
I'm not saying limit them. I'm saying get your arguments straight before you start saying that all they want is to ban all guns.
I didn't
No, of
say they
course
want to
not.
ban all guns. It's a
It's
slippery
about
slope.
following the actual rules that are already there
It's
in
a
place
it's
and
a
not
slip-
having to change them.
It's a slippery slope. Once you start restricting gun rights, next thing you know, you don't have any guns, or you can only have guns in your own home, and then you can't use them in your own home, much like how it is in Canada. Okay.
I think our dog is eating her bed.
Yeah, you can continue.
I'll continue. That was it. So we can move on to the next section. Well, I'll continue talking for now. But with Kyle Rittenhouse, for example, I think it is different as well because he was there and he was legally carrying. I mean, the whole state crossing, that it was an issue. But in the end, he was acquitted and he wasn't found as guilty. But it's different with Alex Preddy because he was there not to, render aid as Kyle Rittenhouse was trying to do and had been proven to do. But he was there, Alex Preddy was there to obviously cause disturbance, at least. But let's move on to personality politics because we do have an update on Don Lemon and his ridiculousness.
Angry. I've had enough of these people.
But starting off with, of course, updates from Don Lemon, and it seemed like he might have gotten away, but not so fast.
Well, I was pleasantly surprised when I seen this story come up. I honestly didn't think anything was going to happen. I see a lot of journalists complaining about this. When we went in depth on this story, I mean, he had broken the law here. He had conspired, and he knew what was going to go on and that they were going to commit a felony.
Yeah, he was involved. And Harmeet Dillon has been doing a better job than a lot of the other ones. Breitbart News says, quote, Don Lemon has been arrested and is in federal custody. His lawyer says agents picked him up in his Los Angeles home, I'm guessing, as he was covering the Grammy Awards. That's funny.
Yeah, Chris Cuomo had a good take on this, though. I think they just made Don Lemon's career here. He's obviously going to plead innocent. Even if he's found guilty, it's not going to be any serious time in jail. He'll pay the fine, but he's going to probably get a multi-million-dollar contract and become the face of this kind of movement, especially going into the summertime. He'll probably grab the contract before summertime so they can have him reporting on TV and play the victim or the sympathetic factor that the government came after him. He was on the ground. He was doing the real fight. I mean, I think they just made Don Lemon's career.
I don't know.
And I know
because he was fighting. I mean, even before he went independent, etc. I mean, he got in trouble with CNN. Even in CNN, when they reported about this, they said that yes, he had, he had done the things that the government was saying he did at the church.
He's quickly becoming the journalist martyr for the left. And what do you want to bet?
I don't know if he's that well liked because again, he had all these claims of misogyny, etc. on him, plus all the Me Too circumstances that he was involved in, plus he's not that friendly with CNN anymore. So I don't know if
CNN, MSNBC can pick him up. There's a lot
but there's a reason why he's independent and he hasn't been picked up by anyone because nobody wants him because he's too risky.
I also think coming the midterms and probably in the summertime and the 2028 elections, the left is going to invest a lot of money into independent media because they're behind in that space. And Lemon may be one of those people, and they might want to make a small independent network around him.
Well, we'll see if they allow him to even do that.
Well, even if he gets time, it's not going to be anything serious.
It's like a slap on the wrist, technically.
Yeah.
And what he's being charged with doesn't carry that much sentence time. So
this is probably more beneficial for him than a negative for him overall in the long run, I would say. His career was done until something like this comes up. Now he can be the martyr, possibly get a contract.
I don't think he'd get a contract, but we'll see.
We'll see. I'll be ready to be right on that one.
And you put this story in here. Do you want to intro it or should I just read it?
Yeah, you can read the first little thing here.
So Marian Offal says, quote, YouTuber gives EU or European voters real control. Phidias says that EU politics is broken. You vote for a party, hate half their policies, and then politicians make the real decisions behind closed doors anyway. So he's doing it differently. Not just one country, branches across Europe, same message, one bloc inside parliament to gain more leverage. But here's the twist. When big votes come up, he doesn't decide. The people do. He drops it in an app. 20,000 people vote. He follows their call. Literal direct democracy.
And we don't need to really play the clip. I wanted to talk about this. If you're interested in how I believe politics is going to work in the future, this interview is it. This gentleman simply wanted to make a YouTube video. He was a famous YouTuber in Cyprus, and he wanted to say how to win an EU election. So he ran an election campaign with kind of interesting promotional videos he did on YouTube, and it went viral. He got elected as a politician. Now he's helping other politicians get elected, and he's trying to make it a party where anybody within Cyprus can be part of the party, and they do the interviews live, and it's becoming kind of like this X factor where all Cyprus and a lot of the EU is starting to tune in to vote these politicians into office, and it's making politics sexy again. Also, his party is allowing the people to actually take the vote, not on every issue because it's very complex to even get the vote out there, but on certain issues, he'll vote the way the people kind of tell him to. So it's bringing democracy kind of back to the people. It's a very interesting format. I think a lot of YouTubers are going to go into politics because people can learn to trust them and know their views over a long period of time and kind of hold them accountable over time if they've had a certain view and then they flip all of a sudden. I think YouTubers are going to make a big impact in future politics. This is one of the first examples. There's been a couple others actually in the EU, but I think it's going to be happening globally soon.
I will say with some YouTubers, that is a terrifying thought. But with others, I mean, we also saw Andrew Lawton in Canada actually get into Parliament and actually start to inform the people what was actually going on there.
Well, this gentleman was very interesting because he knew nothing about politics. He actually got famous because he made a video where he wanted to get a hug from Elon Musk just to show that a poor kid from Cyprus could actually meet the world's richest man. So he slept outside of SpaceX for a few months and it started going viral every day, and Elon Musk eventually came out. And when he ran for politics later on, Elon Musk knew him, so he started retweeting him, and that really helped him get elected as well. But he knew absolutely nothing about politics, and he says throughout that interview, for this first 6 to 12 months, I was just researching and studying. Even to this day, when you're asking me questions about things, I'm going to have to go home and study about it. It's nice to see a politician that doesn't say, I know everything, and I'm actually going to research something.
And also not see career politicians that just continue and do everything for their own benefit without thinking of the people. However, some of the plan, or we'll see how it works out, because I don't think it's ever been really done. I mean, Andrew Lawton, I don't think consults with his constituency as much or with his subscribers, but it could devolve if he's not careful and if people are not careful into a tyranny of the majority. And I would say that that would be concerning, but if it works and if it's actually there's checks and balances and there is some sort of control as to what the people, the majority of the people, but also the minority think, that would be okay. I'm
less concerned. Well, I mean, we've been talking a little bit, and I've been hearing this kind of come up, not just from you, but from other liberals as well. Not to say that you're a liberal, but the tyranny of the majority, but that's what democracy is. The majority votes, the majority rules.
But there are checks and balances, supposedly, allegedly. I mean, democracy is democracy is a worse system if you don't count all the rest.
Well, what I've been seeing is liberals thinking it's elites that should rule the society, and it doesn't matter. I'm not saying
it should be elite.
It doesn't matter what the majority says, but that's what democracy has become.
But the problem is, for example, here in Mexico, the majority elected a government that is very quickly turning as communist, and they only elected them because they were giving them money. So that is the problem if a party gets into power and then wants to hold that power through the tyranny of the majority by convincing the people to continue to vote for you by giving them, which shouldn't happen technically. In a democracy, you shouldn't be able to bribe people to vote for you because that's not a true actual vote by a knowledgeable populace. If you're able to, bribe people to vote for you, then you're forever in power, but you're not actually holding power because the people want you there. It's because you're giving them things that they want.
Yeah, I just don't...
that's the danger of the tyranny of the majority.
Here in Mexico, it's every 6 years there's a major election, and that's kind of an issue. 6 years is too much. It's too much time to consolidate power.
But 4 is too little, I would say. That's the thing.
I'll go with 4 because you can do 4 and 4, which would make 8, which would actually give you more than 6. And if you're doing a good job, then you get another 4.
I guess. Let's move on to some reactions from Hollywood.
Oh,
as
this
well.
was a crazy reaction.
From Colin Rugg, quote, Breaking Bad star, idiot Chilean Giancarlo Esposito says it's time for a revolution, says some people would die, but the rest of us would survive. They can't. And I love it when the revolutionaries say that they would be the ones that would be spared by a tyrannical government. Of course not. Once you've done your job as a revolutionary, you're the most dangerous to the actual revolutionaries that now have power, because you know how to take them down as well. So they're the first ones to go. He says they can't take us all down. If the whole world showed up in Washington, they'd end all 500 million or however, but the rest of us would survive. This is time for a revolution. And again, I think revolutionaries have no idea what they're talking about. I'll play the clip because the guy is having to deal with our puppy who is not behaving today. But also, again, I'm pretty sure he's Chilean. And another idiot Chilean that's always talking about revolutions is Pedro Pascal. And I've done a whole video about it. You can watch it on this channel, and his backstory and the actual revolutionary parents also that he has. So get these people out.
Okay, I sat her right next to me, so if she does anything, I'll get her.
Well,
she was tearing apart her
bed.
dog bed and
Yeah, she was doing that yesterday.
taking out the stuffing, literally.
Yep. And it's a newer bed. So.
Okay, let's play the clip here.
This is time for a revolution. It's time for it, and they don't even know that's what they're starting. You know, some very rich old white men are exerting their power to suppress our own people, thus creating a feeling of civil war in the streets, preparing the haters to hate, teaching them how to shoot. They're not even trained right, to kill. This is all a preparation for a very insidious problem that's happening in our world. And for me, I have to speak out that we will not be iced out. This is not going to happen. They can't take us all down. If the whole world showed up on Putin's doorstep or on the Iranian's doorstep or in Washington, it would they'll kill 550 million, however, but the rest of us would survive with a new. This is time for revolution. It's time for it, and they don't even know that's what they're starting. But we have to be strong enough to know that we can change the world. We have to change it from within. So if I'm spiritually ready and right, you know, and I'm ready to understand other people and to agree to disagree with them and say, okay, let's find the solution together, then that starts to change things. Not by deporting immigrants, not by killing.
Okay, we can kind of leave it here. And I just say they're ready for a revolution. They want a revolution. They think if everybody steps on the doorstep, the good thing is everybody's not with their communist revolution that they want. No. A large majority, the majority of America isn't with it. And they actually voted for illegals to be exited from the country. Now, they don't want to see people getting shot in the streets. That's why there's a lot of controversy right now. But if Trump can use some new tactics and do exactly what he was elected on, I don't think there's going to be a revolution. These people, and it's not just him, there are tons of clips out there, especially from celebrities calling for civil war, calling for revolution.
From their mansions too, which is ironic. And they don't understand that, yes, it's very easy and comfortable to call for a revolution from your mansion that you got, or from your big house that you got from being a TV star and being, you know, liked in your craft. It's very different to call for a revolution somewhere, or to see what actually happens when revolution happens. And because they're within the elites, at least, I think they think that they will be able to survive. They would be part of those that, you know, get to now govern the new revolutionized country. But that is not the case. Usually the artists are the first ones that they take out.
Yeah, he wants a revolution, but he's not going to go to the street. And none of these famous people are going to be in the street for any longer than a couple minutes to get a photo op like AOC at the border.
Or get arrested.
Yeah.
Fake arrested. Like AOC too, when she put her hands behind her back.
Yes.
I don't know if we played that clip, but that was infuriating. Because Greta Thunberg had just done the same too. That is another tactic that they use. And I believe our dog really does not want to behave today. Okay, I'll continue. The thing is, this clip you put in this clip, so I'm guessing because if I talk about Andrew Wilson, it's not going to turn out as guessing as you wanted to. But from Steven Crowder, and again, this is personality politics, so this fits within. Steven Crowder says, quote, "I do believe them. I think, well, they think they're fighting against fascism. I do think that they believe it. that 100%. I just think it's an unjustified belief, and I think that's ridiculous, which Andrew Wilson was recently on the Joe Rogan podcast. You watched it all, I believe? I didn't watch it
Yeah,
all.
I'm a big fan of Andrew Wilson. You don't like him as much. He's one of the big Christian nationalists that's in the debate sphere. He's starting to get more and more recognition. I really just wanted to find an excuse to put a clip of him in here, but it was a good clip, and the interview was great on Joe Rogan. They got along fantastically. I definitely think he'll be bringing him back.
Right. This is the quintessential description of the color revolution. I mean, they're trying to create chaos. And it's very well funded and very well organized. It's not as simple as this is an organic protest that people are fired up because ICE is in their community. That's not really what's going on
at all.
But I think there's a lot of good people that are wrapped up in that think they're doing a good thing, and they really do think they're fighting fascism because they exist in these bubbles. And they're
I believe them.
Yeah,
I do believe them that they think that they're fighting against fascism, and I've debated with enough of these people on what historically fascism is in comparison to what they perceive it as, that I do think that they believe that 100%.
Right.
I just think it's an unjustified belief, and I think it's ridiculous.
It's not accurate.
It's not accurate.
You know, one of the things that we went over the other day is we talked about the deportations, right? And that there's been somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 million deportations, but 1.6 of them were like self-deportations. 1.6 of them were like people were notified and they said, "Well, just get the fuck out of here. I don't want to be in jail."
Yeah, good.
And then 500,000 of them were, but people are saying very few of them have been violent criminals. But we found out there was like 8%. This is just 8% of what we know has been caught. That is a lot of violent criminals. If you go to 500,000 people and 8% of them are murderers
And pause
and
it for a quick
rapists.
second. We can actually leave it there, but 1.6 million have been self-deportations because they've taken either the $1,000 or the $2,500 and the plane ticket. They can self-deport at any airport and get that amount of money. And the left is trying to use this against the right by saying, oh, it's all 70% of the people being deported are nonviolent criminals. Yeah, it's because they're smart enough to take the cash and the plane ticket and go. So of course they're nonviolent, but they go into the deportation statistics as nonviolent criminals.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and we also mentioned recently that I believe DHS they released the website with all the actual violent criminals that they do get, and kind of like the rap sheet, and for people to understand who they're actually deporting. So the narrative can continue to crumble that they're arresting American citizens.
Well, one more interesting thing about that interview with Rogan, near the end of the interview, Andrew Wilson says, when I started debating online, he did it during the jibby jab era, and he never expected to kind of be an online personality. He says that these leftists were actually kind of smart, and I'd debate them and I'd usually win, but it was intellectual debate. And as he gets more and more famous and he's breaking through into the mainstream, they're having him debate more famous politicians or people that are bigger intellectuals. And he says the debates are getting easier and easier and easier because they're ideologically captured. They can't say certain things because the left will eat them alive.
And they live in a bubble too. And as we know, the further up the ladder of academia you go, the less a person knows because they've concentrated so much on one subject that they might know nothing about. And we've seen multiple examples of very esteemed academics actually falling apart when they're trying to debate on things that they know less about, but they think, and that's the thing, they think they know more, but that actually makes them dumber.
Yeah.
In my opinion. But let's move on to health and MAHA, something that has been highly contested also amongst academic circles.
But the greatest danger of all would be to do nothing.
Health, MAHA, and education. I always forget to add the education part of it.
Well, and there's two stories here, so.
Yes. So from Valerie Ann Smith, and if you didn't know this is really interesting. RFK Jr. exposed his white gluten allergy skyrocketed, and it wasn't out of the blue.
And we talked about this the other day. I just wanted to go more in depth and actually have RFK's view on this because he was the one implementing the policy we were talking about the other day.
So it says 2006 marks the date when suddenly these gluten allergies began exploding.
In 2006, they discovered that Roundup was a desiccant. And what that means, if you spray it on a crop, it will actually dry out the crop. And one of the big enemies of the farmer is that if there's rain around the time of harvest, their crops can get wet and then they get moldy and then it ruins the entire silo.
Yeah.
And so what Monsanto did is they began telling farmers, spray this on the crop, on your wheat, right before harvest or at the time of harvest. And it was so popular that about 85% of the Roundup that has been used in history has been used since 2006. And
Wow.
a large part of that is as a desiccant. And what that meant, Mark, is for the first time they're spraying it on food.
Yeah.
Right at harvest.
Yeah.
And for the first
Not
time.
early in the season when it may have a chance to wash off, but actually just before you're going to eat it.
Right. And they're spraying it for the first time on wheat because there was no such thing as Roundup Ready wheat.
Yeah.
They started spraying it on wheat as a desiccant. And so 2006 marks the date when suddenly these gluten allergies began exploding. The
Interesting.
celiac disease and all these kind of wheat problems that we started seeing in this country. If you measure back and say, when did it start? You can look and draw a red line, and it's 2006, and it's the year that they began spraying it on wheat.
And I've actually known about this for quite a while, and they're just soaking a lot of this wheat in Roundup because they don't want it to mold and they don't want to lose their crop. It's poisoning Americans. And I'm glad RFK is actually taking this on. He's passing legislation, but more importantly, he's bringing the research papers in. And when the United States and the CDC bring in research papers of this nature, they're used on an international basis in courts. So this is really strengthening arguments and building frameworks to really make permanent changes in a lot of countries around the world. And it's not just this issue with Roundup, but he's doing the same thing for a lot of things like the jibby jab.
But a lot of people also, for example, go to Europe and they eat a lot of bread when they usually can't eat bread in North America or in the US specifically. In Canada, I think they do have something similar, but some of the things that are allowed in the US are banned in Canada. But there was also an explosion of celiac up there, so and of wheat allergies. But in Europe, there's this gigantic bread and wheat culture because it was one of their foundational seeds that helped grow their agriculture and agricultural system. So there's more of a respect, I guess, for wheat. And that is why there's a lot of chemicals that are banned in Europe. Not that I like Europe at all, but that is why it's an explanation as to why people that always go to Europe and say, why can I eat the bread there, but not in the US or not in Mexico? Because they do use it here in Mexico. Not the same thing, but similar, because I looked into it. That there's an answer there, but they don't want you to know the answer because it's not beneficial for either the farmers that are using it that helps either save their crops or for the government that continued to allow it for so long.
Yeah, we actually recently went to the store and I bought a bunch of Italian pasta and I made sure it was made in Italy and it just looked a lot different.
Mm-hmm.
I've been eating it. I've been feeling a lot different. I usually don't eat pasta because, it just bloats me. I don't feel well after, especially American pastas.
Mm-hmm.
And that's usually what's in the store. Man, I feel completely different after eating this Italian pasta.
And that's the thing. That's also why.
And most of the EU legislation when it comes to food, they actually have a war against their farmers. But in this particular case, it's one time where they're actually done something good.
And it's going to take a while for me to explain this, but I wanted to start grinding my own wheat for the longest time and making my own flour because like her or not, if you like TPUSA or not, Alex Clark, not Alex Cooper. She has a really weird podcast called Call Her Dad. No, Alex Clark has been doing a lot of series on health and on wellness she completely pivoted her pop culture show that she used to do towards kind of like a whole show and interviews with about health and MAHA. And she's had on a lot of very interesting guests, but she had on this lady that explained basically all of this, but fully in depth for about an hour. And she started suggesting milling your own flour and making your own bread and the differences that it makes by using the actual whole grain and then the whole wheat and how it's different, etc. But it is very interesting. Go watch it. I think the episode the lady is from the Bread Breakers because she has her own store now and her whole movement within her own town or whatever. She bakes the bread for everybody. But
the issue
it is very interesting that a lot of people don't even know what's causing it.
Yeah, the big issue is it doesn't matter if you bake your own bread, I would think, because if you're still getting the wheat from farms that are spraying
select
Roundup.
where you get it from.
Yeah, that's the point. So you're gonna even if you eat breads, you can select where you're getting the breads from as well. But most breads are actually manufactured locally. So if all local manufacturers of bread are getting Roundup wheat, it's very hard to find non-Roundup wheat and non-Roundup breads. Okay, let's go into the last article in the MAHA
From Wide Awake
section.
Media, quote, a freedom of information request has uncovered that yet again the UK Met Office has been publishing temperatures from non-existent weather stations. And we reported this a while ago. The numbers were already actually coming from a model that was inventing data from phantom neighboring stations. This is the foundation of the UK's climate record.
Yeah, and this goes into health, and I put it in the health section because more people die from cold every year than heat. Yet we're being told that the globe's naturally getting warmer, and I think it's heating up from the inside. That's why you have the polar caps melting. That being said, this year was one of the first years that the polar caps actually grew.
The UK Met Office has again been caught publishing temperatures from weather stations that don't exist. An FOI revealed Lowestoft closed in 2010, yet the Met Office kept issuing official temperatures for it. The office said they were using well-correlated neighbouring stations, but the FOI revealed that this was a lie. The numbers were actually coming from a model that was inventing data from phantom neighbouring stations. When exposed, they quietly deleted years of readings for Lowestoft, as well as a number of other stations, and added a disclaimer saying their data is for general interest only. FOIs also show over 1/3 of Met Office stations never existed, and that real high-quality sites like Colwood are ignored. Also, more than 80% of the network is low-grade class 4 or 5, by WMO standards giving 2 to 5C uncertainty. This is the foundation of the UK's climate record: closed stations, imaginary stations, and synthetic. The UK Met Office has
Canada is very similar, and Canada did something very interesting because they wanted to show, I think, more global warming than there actually was. They started moving these weather stations where they were getting regular weather readings. They moved them from in city centers where it's typically they moved them from up north into city centers where it's typically a lot warmer. So remote stations up north, just because they're up north, number one, they're colder, but number two, when you move it into city centers and by airports, it's naturally a lot warmer in those areas.
And the dangerous thing is that then the UK or Canada or whatever country is fudging their climate numbers want to introduce policy based upon the alarmist numbers that they're finding all of a sudden, and oh, it's changing and we have to do something. Like, for example, cover the sun, like they try to do in the UK.
Yeah, and it may very well be warming slightly. I just don't think it's warming at the rate that they're telling everybody it is. And they said there would be no polar ice caps in 10 years. Now there's polar ice caps are starting to regrow. I mean, they can't pass these climate alarmist policies if they're not getting the kind of global heating that they want. So they're fudging.
So they make up the data.
They're fudging the data, but they're doing this across all sciences, and this is why people just aren't trusting science anymore.
Yeah,
it's because the way
all of a sudden
the way it's being funded and researched
and captured.
Yeah.
But let me read the few comments we have about health and MAHA. Trembriggs, hello Trembriggs, says Dawn already released. Yeah.
But it was minor charges, so I did expect that. But they did have video of him getting arrested, which was nice.
At least they did something. You know?
Yeah.
And again, it was very minor, but it's like a slap on the wrist, but to show a message.
Yeah, but I didn't. When I heard Chris Cuomo's take, I was like, this could backfire a little bit.
Why?
Cuomo, Don Lemon might build a career off of this thing. He was nowhere, and
he's hated enough by both sides.
He went from CNN to being independent and bothering people on the street. Nobody wanted to talk to him.
Well, but he left CNN because of his comments and his misogynistic comments.
I could see him on MSNBC. I could see him. They could even probably bring him on with Whoopi Goldberg. I mean, any number of things. The View.
God.
A gay token black man on The View.
But it's supposed to be all women. I mean, he could put on a wig, I guess. Trembriggs says no preservatives in Europe or artificial coloring or a bunch of different things.
Yeah, but the problem with Europe is they do have a huge war on farmers, and that's going to be that's a big issue with me. We've gone into it in depth. So although I do like some of their policies, the way they're treating regular farmers and they're moving headlong into number one, industrial farming or outsourcing their farming to South America rather than having the ability to do it themselves. This is a typical EU policy where they would rather have other people do it for them than have the self-sufficiency to do it themselves. Then when something like a pandemic happens, where they're going to be, they can't do anything for themselves, and then global systems shut down and people starve.
But at the same time, they are trying to control the food supply by imposing all of these laws and trying to get rid of independent farmers.
Yeah.
Which is terrifying and terrible.
I want to see more farmers, more small farmers. I want to see more incentives, tax incentives to move people from cities to farms and start producing local and monetized food.
And more people investing in what goes into their body, what they eat, how they grow it, learning things that we have completely lost knowledge of as societies almost. Like that is important knowledge that if it is not passed down and it is not, they don't allow it to continue flourishing, it's going to be lost forever until the apocalypse, and then we have to become agrarian societies again.
They want that because if you lose that knowledge, then you're completely reliant on industrial farming, which is the government basically.
Yes. Okay. Let's move on to
U.S. politics.
Remigration.
Oh, remigration, yeah.
Unless you don't want to.
No, 2 stories in remigration, then the U.S., and then I believe Canada.
Yes.
The immigration policies in Europe are a disaster. You're destroying Europe. You're destroying the culture of Europe.
And we do call it remigration because that's better than just migration.
Maybe we'll pause it for just a quick second. We did again post that the Alberta separatist video, and I'm a big supporter of the Alberta separatist movement. We're going to continue to amp up our reporting. Most of our videos are centering around Canada because I think for the rest of this year, the separatist movement is probably the biggest issue globally. It really changes the paradigm between citizens and governments, not just in Canada, but it can do it globally. It can have a huge impact on how citizens interact with the EU as well if Alberta is able to separate. But there's been a lot of support behind that video, so thank you for everybody that's from Alberta. I think there's a lot of people from Alberta watching that video because our subscriber rate is going up a lot. So I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And that is the terrifying prospect for, I think, all countries. If they see that a province can separate from Canada, which is a Commonwealth country, first world, allegedly, etc., then what could happen to them if their people decide that they are upset with their own government?
Yeah.
The EU is still in shambles, though. From Basil the Great, quote, if Farage won't do mass deportations, then what is the point in reform?
Yeah, and I've been bringing up Farage more and more and more. He's completely flip-flopped on his policies. He's not the UK first politician that I thought he was, but this is a major reversal, and he just says it bluntly. I don't even know if I want to support Reform UK, but it's kind of like Poilievre in Canada. It's the best of the best.
Best of the worst.
Best of the bad options you have. And that's why the Alberta separatist movement in Canada is so important, because voting for Poilievre isn't really voting for a serious change.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can get Alberta to separate, that is a real change that will build a future.
These people need to go, don't they? And by saying that you don't support mass deportations...
If I say I support mass deportations, that's all anybody will talk about for the next 20 years. So it's pointless even going there.
So it's a rhetorical problem.
It's a political impossibility to deport hundreds of thousands of people. We simply can't do it.
These people need to go, don't they? And by saying that you don't support...
Just let it play again.
Mass deportations...
If I say I support mass deportations, that's all anybody will talk about for the next 20 years. So it's pointless even going there.
So it's a rhetorical...
Like, if you're looking for vying for political power and saving your country, wouldn't you want that to be the thing that people remember you for and that they talk about for years and years on end? Yes.
Worthless politician. And I'm somebody that stuck up for this guy, and that's why I'm so pissed. I mean, grow some balls, grow some backbone. You might need some knee pads. You can borrow them from Gavin Newsom there. This is absolutely ridiculous. This is a betrayal of the British people. This is the only hope for change in Britain, and he doesn't have enough backbone to stand up and say, I'm going to deport people. He's looking at Trump and saying, oh, Trump's getting too much heat. I'm glad Trump's doing it. I might say he needs to re-strategize and try some new tactics so he doesn't blow the midterms. That being said, I like what Trump's doing so far, and I wish more politicians would do it. But Farage, I guess Farage isn't the guy, and people need to reconsider even voting for him.
And the UK is important because, again, it does control not just the UK, but the Commonwealth countries. And a lot of things that you might not think that are connected in Canada or Australia and all the rest of the Commonwealth countries are actually from things that they're doing over in the UK first, or bringing over first to Canada and then to the UK.
After I grabbed that clip yesterday, I mean, I was just absolutely upset at Farage after seeing that. I mean, that was kind of the final straw for me, but I started looking in like, what's happening here? Why is all of his solid good policies changing? And it's because people from the other, the Conservative Party in the UK are abandoning their old party and coming over to Reform UK, and they're having an impact within Reform UK and basically changing it from the inside out. They're just going to make it what the other party was once they fully take it over.
Yeah, because the Tories were basically just Labour, but a little bit more into religion, for example, which is the same thing that's happening here in Mexico as well. There's no actual right here. There's no actual conservatives here.
Yeah.
It's all just paper tigers.
I mean, and even in Canada, they had Aaron O'Toole, which was just a complete buffoon. He was literally a liberal. He's as bad as Doug Ford is. Doug Ford wants to be the leader of the Conservative Party. Pierre Poilievre, I believe, has his review today. As much as I don't like him, at least he's not a full-throated liberal, but we got a video we're going to do on him probably next week. A lot of the votes he's taken and a lot of the policies he's done, again, it's almost like a uniparty, but he is the best hope for Canada. So if you're going to vote in Canada, I guess vote for Pierre Poilievre if you don't live in Alberta. And if you do live in Alberta, it's time to go.
But Europe does continue to be cooked, especially because of migration and legal migration too. Ian Miles Chong, which we don't love, but he had the information.
But a lot of outlets were not only reporting on this, but there's been a lot of interviews done. They completely went around the regular policies in order to get this thing done.
And this is Pedro Sanchez's Spain, which he has continued to destroy, even as destroyed as it already was. But Spain just legalized 500,000 illegal aliens to defeat the far right. It's not even a secret anymore. By legalizing 500,000 illegals under the guise of defeating the far right, Pedro Sanchez is essentially dropping the mask. This is electoral engineering. The logic is simple: legalize 500,000 people, fast-track them to citizenship, which takes as little as 2 years for many, but not for all. And you've effectively imported a massive loyal voting bloc that's indebted to the left. And it's funny because I know a lot of people that have tried to get Spanish citizenship, being from Mexico. A lot of them have the ability to do that. And it's taken some people 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and yet he's trying to do fast track them just to get, because he knows he's losing. He knows he's not very popular in Spain right now.
This might help him for this first election, but after all these 500,000 get permanent citizenship, it's very often the immigrant themselves that realize we don't want this country to become the country that we came from. And this is kind of what happened to a lot of the leftist voters that came from other countries in the United States, and they were completely surprised by it. But I do think it helps him in the short term, and that's all he really wants. Because it looked like he was going to get unelected, but I don't think so now. And the way he did this was just so absolutely underhanded. He completely avoided the entire political system and used a extremely old law that was done by kings and things like this.
This is a continuation of what we've seen with Europe, just in general, with Macron, with all these quasi-socialists that are in power and continue to be in power, and also yell at Donald Trump because he's trying to not do that. But this is how they try to continue to stay in power, even if they are more and more unpopular with their own citizens.
Well, I'll say one more thing.
They'll find a way.
It's my hat's off to Viktor Orban. People say he's too hardline on immigration. He pays the $1 million a day to not have any immigrants in the country, but Poland as well. And there's a series of countries that are starting to stand up against immigration. It's important they take an extremely hard line because they can be the base for the statistics that they can point when their country doesn't fail and all the Western European countries do, because they allowed millions of immigrants in. To be the catalyst for the Western European nations to actually change.
Well, because Europe allowed its own conquest. That's literally what's happening. Europe is allowing itself to be conquered because they got their brains so cooked to think that, oh, they were so bad because they went to go civilize a lot of civilizations, and now they have to be conquered by those that they tried and attempted to better.
Well, and they want to demonize Donald Trump because he's doing the opposite. And if it works and he does the opposite, it's going to shine a light on them, and their citizens are going to be absolutely outraged.
Speaking of Trump and the U.S., let's actually go to the U.S. And first and foremost, the UN is in shambles, actually now fully admitting it as well. Bernie says, quote, the UN has warned its 193 member states of imminent financial collapse, not because the world is ending, but because the US, their largest funder, is withholding money. This organization has been consolidating power for decades. They're panicking now. Good. But when we had been reporting that the UN hadn't been doing so good for a long time, and now I think they're seeing this and the US withdrawing funds as a great excuse to actually come out and say it and say, oh, we're not doing well. But they haven't been doing well for years.
Well, it's crazy. This is one nation. And you're all trying to stand up against this one nation. All the middling powers want to stand up and become a superpower under Mark Carney. Middle nations of the world unite. Well, one nation is pulling out from 193 and your organization is going to collapse. It shows what a fraud the UN has been financially and otherwise. I'm not going to be surprised if they survive and China steps in and takes over from the UN. I think that's the move that's going to happen. We see Europe flying, or especially the UK, flying over to China with 60 of their biggest business leaders and cutting deals with China. We see Mark Carney going to China with his business leaders, cutting deals. They're trying to transition away from the orange man into the arms of communism, because ultimately communism is what they want in their countries. That's why they're getting rid of freedom of speech. That's why they took rid of bodily autonomy in a lot of these countries during the jibby jab. Freedom of movement's under attack. I mean, all your basic freedoms in these countries are under attack, and they're trying to call Donald Trump Hitler because he's actually taking the stance of freedom in a lot of these cases. And it shines a light that they're doing the actual opposite. Now, if Biden was doing the same thing or a Democrat had won, they would have got away with all this stuff. But the citizens in their countries are looking at the United States and saying, if he can do it, why can't you?
Mm-hmm. I was going to say something, but that you said,
I kept babbling
you said
on.
the H word and then I forgot everything.
There goes the show.
I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, but another thing that when you told me this and I mentioned, I mean, we know the UN has been failing for a long time. It's not news, but it's news to most people, I think, because now they can blame it on somebody else. It's not them and their corruption and their everything they've been doing. That's not right. But what I would be worried about is if somehow some people within the UN are able to manipulate or get into Trump's Board of Peace and then make that into literally like a new UN if they want to save it.
No, he's been pretty.
Hopefully,
he's actually watching that like a hawk and excluding and making sure it comes together in an appropriate manner so they can actually accomplish things, not just have a bigger bureaucracy. That being said, I was going to say a lot of people might not know. Yeah, the UN's been having trouble for well over a decade now. They're finally able to use Trump as the excuse to why they're financially collapsing. Mm-hmm. They were collapsing long before Trump. Yeah. But they prefer, if they do collapse, to have somebody they can blame it on, and Trump would be that thing.
But Trump being that thing also with the potential hopeful collapse of Cuba. Marina Fuel says, quote, Trump declares national emergency, tariffs on any country supplying oil to Cuba. This made our president, Claudia Sheinbaum, have to change her diaper a few days ago when she had to talk to Trump. The executive order targets nations that sell or provide oil to Havana, framing it as protecting U.S. national security from Cuba's malign actions. And Mexico was one of the biggest helpers to Cuba and sending oil from the Mexican people over to Cuba. It has been halted now because then we saw that both Marco Rubio and Trump have been talking to the current administration here in Mexico. So they halted all of it, even though they said they'd already done it, but they didn't.
Yeah, well, you're giving Sheinbaum a lot of grief here. I actually like the fact she cooperated on this, and they did that behind the scenes. She's been cooperating a lot with the Trump administration. She's been being pushed back to the middle while Mark Carney is taking Canada completely into communism. Now, both leaders, Sheinbaum and Carney, are extreme far-left radicals. The difference is Trump has a lot more leverage over Sheinbaum, and he's actually able to push her back to the middle, which, because we live in Mexico now, because we fled from Canada, I'm glad the fact that she is coming back to the middle. And I am glad the fact that she has been cooperating with the U.S. administration a lot, that they kind of told her before, you need to cut off oil shipments to Cuba because we're probably going to do it in a week or two. Now that they're doing it, it actually makes Mexico look like they made the sovereign decision.
But initially she didn't, though. Like, it had been reported that they did. Then she came out to say that, no, we're still going to help Cuba and we want to help their prosperity. And then it came out that, yes, it is halted because the U.S. told them.
Oh, no, she still said it was a sovereign decision. She actually made it a few days ago. So I'm glad the administration is cooperating with her behind the scenes.
But not fully.
Trump has signed an executive order declaring a national emergency and establishing a process to impose tariffs on goods from countries that sell or otherwise provide oil to Cuba. The White House says the measure will protect U.S. national security and foreign policy from what it calls the Cuban regime's malign actions and policies. Meantime, in politics, Minnesota Democrats.
Okay, and Cuba's the next country they're going to kind of zero in on to cut off oil supplies and put a financial kind of hurting on so they can realign them, probably with the United States. But elections-wise, Colombia's election's coming up. It looks like that's going to turn right-wing. I don't see how it doesn't. But Brazil's coming up, and more news comes out every single day. It looks like Brazil's going to turn right-wing, or it has a good chance. That was the one country in the world I thought the leftist government there had really consolidated power and there was no hope. It looks like it may change. And if the United States gets a conservative government in 2028, it wouldn't surprise me if Mexico actually has a conservative candidate somehow.
The thing is, I mean, yes, we do have kind of enough time to bring one up, but it takes a while to get a campaign and to even get approved to be able to run. So we'll see.
He's going to run under the PAN party. But if a Democrat wins in 2028 in the United States, 100%, I believe Sheinbaum's party, whoever takes over from her, will win in 2030 because the Mexican election's in 2030. If a conservative wins in the United States, whether it be Rubio or J.D. Vance, I definitely see the conservative candidate that they're supporting to probably run with the PAN party and win.
But it is interesting to see that a lot of these superpower communist countries like China, etc., Cuba, that alleges that they're a superpower, but they're not. None of them really showed up to fully try to help Venezuela. For example, there was even a song made about Maduro's capture and saying, where's all the communist countries that were supposed to come help you?
Well,
so we'll see what happens with Cuba.
Here's the thing about Brazil.
That's the last stronghold for Russia and China within over here, and Brazil. But
no, you don't. And Brazil. Brazil is the biggest stronghold, even more than Venezuela. And that's why I'm saying Cuba. Brazil and Mexico are the crown jewels of Central and South America. Mm-hmm. If China and Russia don't show up for Brazil and really support Lula in the next election, and it's able to be stole by a right-wing party, which there really was none. It's starting to emerge kind of out of nowhere. A new Bolsonaro is emerging. It's going to be very interesting if Brazil goes right. Because that would mean a complete reversal of the pink wave that had flooded Central and South America just a decade ago.
Gunther Eagleman also says, quote, massive group of GOP lawmakers is backing legislation to let President Trump freeze all foreign aid to countries that refuse to help recover stolen U.S. tax dollars. Plus, mandate SNAP data sharing with USDA to crush fraud in the system. The Republican Study Committee and Representative August Folger just endorsed Representative Brad Finstad's Fraud, Accountability and Recovery Act and SNAP Data Transparency and Oversight Act. Exactly what America First looks like.
Yeah, and I like this policy, and I like that he's going to be able to put more leverage on countries and clean up a lot of this dirty money that's being funneled to NGOs and governments that are going to try to divert the intentions and long-term efforts of the United States. That being said, I also think he's trying to prepare weapons in case the Supreme Court comes back, and it's supposed to come back within the next 3 months, is the tariff decision. If they decide the tariffs that were illegal, that means the U.S. is going to have to probably return the money within 12 months, but it takes a lot of Donald Trump's leverage away. He would be able to shift a lot of the tariff policies into putting a hurt on a lot of these countries through this policy. And I think we're going to see more policies like this. And he's just trying to create a safety net so he can continue to put leverage on these countries if the tariff policy falls apart because of the Supreme Court. Okay.
Do we have to watch the video or no?
Oh, yeah, we can watch the video. I always like to see Trump in a tuxedo there. Oh, by the way, the new movie Melania is coming out. Oh, yeah. I thought I would just mention it.
I don't think it's coming out here in Mexico.
But it will be on streaming pretty soon.
Yeah.
It looks actually pretty decently filmed.
Take back our country. Can you imagine? They stole $18 billion. That's just what we're learning about. That's peanuts. In California is worse. Illinois is worse. And sadly, New York is worse. A lot of other places. So we're going to get to the bottom of all of it. It was a giant scam. Other than that, we're going to have a great new year. So I knew that was a reason for a good year because we're going to get to the bottom, but we're going to get that money back. It's all coming back. So I'm going to just do something very special.
Okay. And yeah, good for him for continuously cleaning corruption up within the United States and internationally. A lot of this money disappears really quickly out of the United States, so it can't be followed, and then is funneled back into radicalist groups and NGOs, which really undermines the administration. And this is what a lot of the America First people don't understand. They say, America first, America only, stop focusing on global issues. If he doesn't focus on these global issues, money is going to be flooded into the United States to subvert a lot of Trump's domestic efforts. So they
That's
go
what
hand
I
in
was
hand.
saying. When
You
said,
say a lot of things. Sometimes I don't pay attention.
You said that I was a rhino and
You are a rhino. You're a neocon.
No, that's exactly what I was saying. Yes, you have to focus on America first, but also on the things that try to subvert all the efforts that you're doing. Like, for example, and this is also good news from Wall Street Apes, quote, the FBI was able to collect 700 boxes of ballots today from Fulton County, Georgia elections office. Democrat Georgia officials are now trying to deflect and say this is election interference for the midterms. They are in here collecting 700 boxes of ballots. We are obviously concerned. This is meant to make people afraid to go to the polls because midterm elections are going to be so crucial to course correcting what's going on in this country.
Okay, and this is the Democrats' take on it, and they are freaking out. There's a crucial Supreme Court decision that came down and some local decisions that are coming down that allow them to start actually investigating what happened in 2020, because none of these were able to be investigated. They were all struck down by the court under a lash. Under what's called lashes. So there was never really investigation. The Democrats keep saying, oh, there was 20 cases and nothing was found. Yeah, those 20 cases weren't allowed to be investigated. So finally, they're starting to get into it. Even if they don't find anything, at least this might restore integrity back into the election system before the midterms. But the way she's reacting, I think there's not only something here, but probably something in a lot of other states.
They are in there collecting 700 boxes of ballots right now. We are obviously concerned about once the ballots leave here, what will happen to the ballots, and our lawyers are going to be working on that. They are working on that as we speak right now. Let me just speak to the larger issue about what this is really all about. This is a scare tactic. This is something that we have seen done before. This is to instill fear and chaos, something that, our officials at the national level are doing on a daily basis. And this is not a surprise for us here in Fulton County. This is meant to make people afraid to go to the polls because midterm elections are going to be so crucial to course correcting what is going on in our country. So instead of taking care of people who are dying in the streets of Minnesota, they're here in Fulton County trying to get ballots from 2020 that have been in storage for now 6 years from when it was found that there was no problems with the 2020 election. They are in there collecting.
They weren't able to investigate it. I think there was something up with the 2020 election. That being said, she's saying they're trying to scare voters from going to the polls. How does investigating something from 2020 scare people from going to the polls? That's almost as outrageous as saying black people can't get voter ID, and then that's a racist policy to ask for voter ID. Absolutely ridiculous.
Well, technically, by even mentioning it and how she's saying, oh, they're trying to scare people to go to the polls, I think that's what she's trying to do. She's trying to scare people by saying, oh, yeah, now they're doing this. Look at what they're doing. Now be scared to go to the polls next, because who knows what could happen.
It's 2026 now. They had plenty of time to go through those ballots. I fully don't expect anything to kind of be there. That being said, maybe they just got lazy after Biden won and just let him sit there. Imagine if that's the case.
Something else is everything happens in Minnesota. Minnesota is insane. Why don't they separate Minnesota? Like Trump should separate just Minnesota and then send it to Canada, because they're insane. Because the next story, also insanely from Minnesota, from Nick Sortor, quote, a Minnesota man, Mark Anderson, has just been arrested for attempting to bust Luigi Mangione out of jail by posing as an FBI agent. These Minnesota leftists feel empowered by Walt supporting people who are de-arresting illegals, so now they're literally trying to bust out unalivers from jail. The incident occurred yesterday at MDC in New York City, and the man was found to be in possession of a blade and a barbecue fork. Maybe he wanted to eat them.
Oh my God. And I'm saying this is that network of money that's coming into Minnesota. It's being refunneled to crazy people like this that are getting other people to go in and pose as FBI agents. This is all coming out of Minnesota.
Oh, is it just...
Yeah, it's just Mangione. And I almost put Mangione on the cover for this story, but I didn't.
And Mangione, if you don't know or don't remember, was the person who unalived
the healthcare executive.
What was the name of the healthcare company?
It was the executive.
Yeah, a healthcare insurance executive. Why are you looking at me?
Continue on.
Well, I need to read what the next story is so I can intro it, so I need you to talk. Hold on. Where are we? Now I lost.
I don't know why you need the name of the company.
Well, because it became like that was how he was identified.
Just a healthcare executive.
Healthcare insurance executive, because the whole thing was about insurance.
Let's continue on here.
From next order, quote, President Trump just announced he has chosen Kevin Warsh to be the next chairman of the Federal Reserve, replacing Jerome Powell. Warsh has historically been pretty pro-Bitcoin, which is an interesting trait for a Fed chair. And Trump says, I've known Kevin for a long period of time, and we have no doubt that he will go down as the greatest Fed chairman, maybe the best. On top of everything else, he is central casting, and he will never let you down.
Yeah, this is huge. He is big on Bitcoin. Trump is trying to make stable coins while still maintain a regular currency. I have been talking a lot about there potentially being two currencies, and this would allow the United States to really have manufacturing and a low currency inside of the country and a high currency outside the country to benefit on both levels. Also, there's been a war on the Fed through Donald Trump and his administration. They are completely reshaping what the Fed is. It's not going to have the same kind of power that it had before. The fact that he is big on Bitcoin, I think will maintain some power in the new age of digital currency. I really hope they maintain a regular monetary currency on top of that.
You want me to play it?
Yeah, you can play it.
Is it just reading the
I don't
Trump
know.
announcement?
You made reference to Bitcoin, and I thought I heard a little bit of condescension that people are buying Bitcoin in these things.
But doesn't it, Charlie Munger, this is 2 or 3 years before he died, Charlie Munger attacked Bitcoin. He called it evil, in part because it would begin to undermine the Fed's ability to manage the economy.
Or it could provide market discipline, or it could tell the world that things need to be fixed.
Bitcoin does not make you nervous.
Bitcoin does not make me nervous. I can harken back to a dinner I had here in 2011 with someone who is another guest on your show. I won't say his name. I just did Mark Andreessen, who showed me the white paper. That was the original white paper. I wish I had understood as clearly as he did how transformative Bitcoin and this new technology would be.
Okay, you can leave it there. And this is very important. I think he does believe in digital currency in a different way than regular governments believe in digital currency. Other governments, like the EU, want to bring in a CBDC that's completely programmable, can actually make you spend your money by a certain date by having a cutoff date on your currency. I mean, there are so many controls built into the CBDC through legislation that has already been passed. It's absolutely scary. Trump wants to bring in a stable coin that will undermine all these CBDCs worldwide, won't have the same kind of programmability, and will have built-in freedoms. The reason he wants to build in these freedoms and not have so many restrictions within the digital currency is because he wants to undermine a lot of these other countries and have the people of those countries choose the American digital currency. And the only way to get them to choose that digital currency is to build in freedoms. I also think if you have a digital currency along with a regular currency, like a hard bill or hard coins, that builds more trust in your digital currency as well. So I hope that's the future. I really hope we don't go into the Canadian or EU model, which is completely programmable digital currency. I think that was always their bailout and that was their way out.
And we have spoken quite a lot about over the years about the dangers of digital currency, especially because during the Freedom or Truckers Convoy in Canada, which was started our channel, we saw what happened when they tried to, and when they did take away people's bank accounts just for supporting or just for being at these protests, which should go completely against the rights and liberties of people of a country, but apparently not.
Yeah. Also, we talk about silver quite a lot on the channel. It dropped from $115 an ounce down to $75. I didn't check it before we went on the show, but that's a major drop. They're trying to really manipulate those markets. Again, I fully expect it to start treading back up. The fact that Samsung came here to Mexico, went directly to the mine, offered, I think it was around $90 an ounce for everything that comes out of the mine on a permanent basis, just shows it's not going to hold at $75 or probably anything lower than $90.
Mm-hmm. And I think what they're used to doing isn't going to continue to work now.
No, and
with the new paradigm.
They were really controlling the mining industry, precious metals a lot. The U.S. government was doing that through banks, but now there are other competitors in the private market with China and even Russia as well. So. There's a battle going on in the precious metals market that will continue to go on over the next couple of years, especially as they try to roll out these digital currencies, and especially as Trump tries to undermine each of these nations' digital currencies, whether it's the unit with the BRICS or it's the CBDC from the EU. The EU CBDC was actually supposed to be the centerpiece all other CBDCs were supposed to coordinate with, re-empowering the EU, and Donald Trump has just completely thrown a boomerang into their plans.
And I did see this clip, and I'm glad you grabbed it because this is insane. But this is how people think, and how even locally, the kinds of answers you get from Democrats. From Libs of TikTok, quote, Democrats are asked if you should have to be a U.S. citizen to vote in our elections. Not a single person can give a straight answer. Incredible.
This is crazy. And you have to remember there's quite a few Democrat sanctuary states that have no voter ID laws, meaning if you go there and try to give your voter ID, they won't even take it.
Do you believe that people should have to be United States citizens in order to vote in Arizona's elections?
I'm representing an organization and I'm speaking to this bill. I've shared those sentiments.
Does the organization you're here representing believe that people should have to be United States citizens in order to vote in Arizona's elections?
That's a question that I have to go back for that very specific question to get the response because I don't know.
Mr. Chair, that's not an answer.
It is not.
My name is Jody Lee. I'm here on behalf of Lucha.
Does Lucha believe that people should have to be citizens of the United States in order to vote in Arizona's elections?
I believe that I don't have an answer from that directly from Lucha. And I think certainly they believe all taxpayers should have access to democracy.
That was quite a word salad. People who are not citizens who are working in Arizona, whether they're here legally or illegally, pay taxes. Does Lucha believe that non-citizens should be able to vote in Arizona just because they pay taxes?
I don't feel comfortable making a definitive statement on behalf of the organization. Hi, sorry, can you turn the ACLU?
Is it the position of the ACLU that people should have to be U.S. citizens in order to vote in Arizona's elections?
It is the ACLU's position that voting should be fair and accessible and to everyone who is eligible.
That would be a U.S. citizen.
That would be a U.S. citizen, man.
It's absolutely crazy. And I think everybody at this point knows that election was definitely stolen from Carrie Lake, in my opinion. It was absolutely a travesty what happened to her. I'm glad she has a prominent position within the U.S. administration, and she's been doing a terrific job. Hopefully she tries to run again, maybe not in Arizona the next time, or maybe they actually clean things up for once. But Arizona has been a hotbed for corruption. That's one of the big reasons Charlie Kirk set up TPUSA within that state.
But also these idiots, like... They're saying, yes, whatever, we don't know, we're not sure, I'm not representing. All the other countries around the world, Mexico doesn't allow non-citizens to vote. Mexico, you need a card, a specific card, not even an ID. It's a very specific voter's card that you need to go be able to go vote.
Well, and then they mark your finger.
And then they mark your finger after you go vote with ink that takes a few days to be able to take off. And yet, yes, of course we have corruption, and of course we've gotten stolen elections, but it's insane that the U.S. is almost the only country that has these kinds of ideas other than Europe and other quasi-communist countries that are trying to do it. But all throughout Latin America, the actual voting process, as corrupt as it is pretty strict on who can and can't vote.
Well, and even Canada has... it's all paper ballots, and they're actually very secure elections. The problem with Canada is a bunch of socialists and communists, and they're not going to vote in their own interest. And that's why we had to leave that country. It's the people that I can't trust in Canada. And that's not all people, because the good people of Alberta, Saskatchewan, hopefully separate. I'm not going to put Quebec in there, but maybe there's a few Quebecers.
There's a few Quebecers. But every time
even half of BC is good, because the other half of BC is actually the Bible Belt within Canada.
The start of the Bible Belt.
But all the population lives in Vancouver, and they're all woke.
They're all insane. But every time I tell, like, even liberal friends here in Mexico that the U.S. or some states in the U.S., some politicians in the U.S. want to make it so you don't need anything to go vote. You could go vote multiple times. They think I'm crazy. They think that that's insane and that could never happen. The U.S. would never allow that. Even super liberal friends that I have are like, but then, like, how would it work? That wouldn't be democratic. And I'm like, exactly.
Well, and then if you try to go into ballot harvesting, tell somebody from a foreign country about ballot harvesting, that is. That's just a concept. Well, that can't possibly exist. That would be completely corrupt.
Yeah. Speaking of completely corrupt, there's been an update on the completely corrupt.
And it was a lot of interesting news coming from the U.S. When I was gathering the stories, it was like big headline after big headline.
From Arnolfo, quote, breaking Clintons to be held in criminal contempt of Congress. Representative Comer said, we're going to hold both Clintons in criminal contempt of Congress.
And that would be Hillary and Bill.
We're going to hold both Clintons in criminal contempt of Congress.
I'm going to note for the record that former President Clinton is not present.
Today, the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform meets to advance 2 resolutions recommending that the House of Representatives find former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in contempt of Congress for refusing to comply with duly issued subpoenas. The question is now on favorably reporting the William J. Clinton contempt report as amended.
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 34, the nays are 8, with 2 voting present.
The ayes have it. Pursuant to this vote, the committee hereby favorably reports and adopts this report recommending that the House of Representatives find William J. Clinton in contempt of Congress for refusal to comply with the subpoena duly issued by this committee. The question is now on favorably reporting the Hillary R. Clinton contempt report as amended.
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 28, the nays are 15, with 1 voting present.
The ayes have it. Pursuant to this vote, the committee hereby favorably reports and adopts this report recommending that the House of Representatives find Hillary R. Clinton in contempt of Congress for refusal to comply with a subpoena duly issued by this committee. We will move the report to the full House. Today, the Clintons must be held accountable for their actions, and Democrats must support these measures or they will be exposed as hypocrites.
But if Comer tries to bring this resolution, he wants to lock Hillary Clinton up, consistent with what Donald Trump's been saying now for 10 years, lock her up, and we'll deal with it appropriately.
Oh, hey, you stop it there. Lock her up. Donald Trump's the one that let her off the first time.
Exactly.
Like, they
should have locked her up.
These are going to be easy convictions to get in a quick manner. Something similar happened to Bannon because he didn't want to go in front of Congress or the committee, I believe, and he was given a short amount of jail time. I would like to see much bigger sentences given out, but before the midterms, you're not going to be able to hold a whole trial and then possibly get the conviction and then a long-term sentence. If you can get a bunch of people not to show up for committee and get 6 or 12-month sentences, at least that's something. And then you can go forward after the midterms with full-on trials, hopefully.
And there was quite a bit of information coming up about the Epstein files between yesterday and today. However, we're going to wait till Monday to fully kind of report on it and until things are a bit more concrete, because I've seen like wild speculation about different things. So I didn't want to, just say it right now.
Let's go into the next story here.
Let's go into Canada. Speaking of.
Oh, the next country.
The next country.
Communist,
the next region.
Communist Canada.
Yes. And yes, we have been concentrating a lot in Canada because I lived there for 13 years. I'm from Mexico. Now we're back in Mexico. But it's going to get, I think, more and more interesting as the days go on.
Well, our original channel actually started with the trucker convoy. We went to the border every day and we kind of reported on that. And then we just kept trying to push back against the government. That channel, once we moved to Mexico, we actually changed to a Spanish language channel, but all of our original content's kind of on there. Mm-hmm. The channel we have now is registered in Canada, just like our original channel is registered in Canada. That being said, it's really hard to push content out of Mexico into English language unless we hit Canada. So a lot of our edited videos, I think for the next 6 or 12 months, are going to focus.
Not all of them.
A lot of them are going to focus specifically on Canada because I really want to support not only the Alberta separatist movement, but the Saskatchewan separatist movement. And I really hope one day BC wakes up and stops being so socialist and communist and can stand on their own 2 feet and maybe separate as well. And that's not to mention Quebec, but I don't have as much love for Quebecers.
Well, so especially because we lived in BC and in Vancouver, in downtown Vancouver. So we lived at the heart of the insanity. So it would be interesting to see if at least the Bible Belt starts, speaking further up, because we did see in Vancouver, near Vancouver as well, all the sentiment for the trucker convoy, people that actually went from Vancouver all the way to in front of Parliament to try to protest. So there is people there that do care, but more and more it feels like sheep if you're just within the miasma of Vancouver.
Well, if Alberta does separate, I said that's going to be a domino effect. That's why I think the Alberta separatist movement is by far the most important movement of all of them. And if that happens and they're willing to lend support to the British Columbian government, I could see British Columbia possibly separating at some point, because I think it's going to get a lot harder for trade if BC is cut off.
Although China is right there, and that BC is the port of entry essentially, and Vancouver is the port of entry for all of Asia. So
okay,
they could try to take over. I could see that happen. It could be the new Cuba.
Well, yeah, if a Democrat gets in, as long as the conservatives in, that's not happening. Trump's
But I
sitting
do
up
think
straight right now.
BC could either separate and become based, and the Bible Belt could actually take over, or it could become the new Cuba missile style
Well,
crisis style.
I think the Alberta separatist movement is extremely important as well, because it gives Trump a chance to show that he's not just trying to take over a bunch of countries. If Alberta separates and the United States gives them support and they cooperate together, it's showing that he's not trying to take over these countries. He's actually just trying to support people to ideologically put themselves first, which a lot of Canada isn't. It's the elite politicians in Canada that are clearing the silverware out before the boat sinks. They're trying to take every dollar and realign themselves with China, so potentially they can bring communism into the United States' northern border.
And so they can conserve their power as elites, because that's how communists rule.
Oh, sorry. Let's get into the first story.
But let's go into the first flip-floppy fish that is Doug Ford, because he's been flip-flopping all the past 2 weeks about Mark Carney and about what's going on in Canada. Bruce McGonigal says Ontario Premier Doug Ford pleads with Quebecers to not vote in a separatist provincial government. He claims it would be a disaster for Canada. Although he was just complaining about Doug Ford selling off the last bit of manufacturing for cars that his province has. So.
Well, Quebec's the only province they care about that doesn't separate. Quebec gets all kind of remittances from Alberta, Saskatchewan. They treat those two provinces like the doormat of Canada. They treat Quebec like the crown jewel, and they'll do anything so Quebec doesn't separate, because it's a bunch of liberal voters there.
It'd be a disaster for our country if the separatists got elected. It's as simple as that. We have to be a united Canada right now. There's never been a more important time in our history to make sure that we stand shoulder to shoulder, united. And not only it'll be good for Canada, it will be good for Quebecers. So folks, remember that. You want to thrive, you want to prosper, you'll prosper a lot more as a united Canada. It'd be a disaster.
Yeah, it's time for Canada to
No, they won't.
It's time for Canada to step up. And when I say Canada, I mean Albertans, because that's the only real Canadians that seem to be up and separate from the country. Even if Mark Carney loses the snap election and Poilievre gets in, I would say he can't really make the changes because a lot of it has been legislated in. So it's time for Alberta to separate, even if Poilievre wins at this point.
And as I've said, and I've continued to mention, yes, I mean, if a conservative gets in, if Poilievre gets in, that might be a little bit of a change. But for the amount of disaster and destruction that they've done to Canada over the past 10 or more years since the Liberals got in initially, it's going to take more than 10 or 15 years to backtrack from all of that. It's not going to be immediate.
I disagree. I'm talking directly to the Albertans here.
No, but I'm saying, like, even if Pierre Poilievre comes into the rest of Canada, you're not going to see that big of a change because
I'm
everything
telling
that's
you why
been
I
passed.
disagree and why Canadians should disagree and stay with their eyes open if Poilievre gets elected. If Poilievre gets elected, he's not going to get a majority government. And without a majority government, he's not going to be able to pass any big policies to make the kind of changes he wants. I believe, he does want change. There's not enough conservatives left in Canada to make those changes. The real conservatives have already left because they see the ship sinking. Alberta and Saskatchewan are the two, strongholds that are kind of left, and I think Carney's trying to flood them with immigrants as we speak to kind of tip the scale so they're not able to separate. I'm also seeing a lot of propaganda coming out from First Nations saying, if you're from Alberta, you can leave, but you're not going to take any of our resources or any of our land. So that's going to be one of the big propaganda pieces they try to bring into the general public's eye. So even if Alberta chooses to leave, they're going to try to stop them with any kind of shenanigans they can. That's kind of why they need to do it now and have Trump recognize them. They need the United States to recognize that vote.
It's funny because you disagreed with something that I said exactly. I said exactly what you just said.
No.
I was saying even if Pierre Poilievre gets in, Canada's not going to see a change, so Alberta should separate.
Yeah, but you didn't explain why.
Okay.
And then, I would disagree with you. I'd say, well, based on what Poilievre's saying, you should see a change. But why can't you see it? It's because
of all the legislation and policies that are basically almost set in stone as well.
No, because he could.
And the rest of the provinces.
If Poilievre had a supermajority, he could change those legislation and policies. So you could see a change in Canada, but he's never going to get a supermajority.
Not within the people themselves.
Yes.
No.
If you get a supermajority, you can literally change legislation.
Yes, but I mean, as in the cultural shifts that could happen, that's going to take forever. Like the educational shifts that have to happen, everything that's been changed over the past 10 years with big effort would take a bigger effort to solve.
It could be done with a supermajority government.
Okay.
But you literally the numbers just don't hash out. It would be impossible for Poilievre to get a supermajority government to make massive legislative
Yes, I'm
changes.
not saying no.
But
I'm
you're trying
saying
to
yes,
you're trying to blame it on the legislation, and if you people,
well, I'm blaming it on the people
no,
as well.
if people believe it can be changed through legislation, and then they'll see Poilievre win, they'll think there can be a change to Canada, not realizing just because Poilievre wins doesn't mean he can change the legislation.
Yes,
he needs a
that's what I'm saying.
supermajority.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay,
But you
well,
said supermajority. I
let's
just didn't say
continue
that
on.
part. From Keith Wilson, quote, Canada isn't an optimal size for a prosperous country. It's too big, too culturally incompatible due to their own fault, and too economically mismatched. Alberta shouldn't be dragged into policies built for someone else. And that is the general sentiment of, again, the separatist movement.
Yeah, and I agree with a lot of this. Keith Wilson is probably the best constitutional lawyer in Canada. Robert Barnes is the best constitutional lawyer in the United States. I kind of look at him as parallels in different countries. I'm glad Canada has somebody like this.
Have they talked to each other ever? No.
Aviva has talked to him a lot.
Canada is not the optimal unit for a country. It's too big. It's too diverse culturally. Vancouver's a perfect example. It's too diverse regionally, economically. Example there would be the trade-off that China forced the government into with auto manufacturing versus prairie farmers, right? If Alberta was a country and Saskatchewan was a country and Ontario decided to put a tariff on EVs, it wouldn't have an impact on canola. Because we don't make EVs and we don't want to make EVs, electric vehicles. And the analogy I came up with, I'm still trying to come up with a better one, is this whole concept of Canada being too big to be optimal and even governable. We're seeing that. Poilievre's always got to pivot to the center. Those of us out here in the prairies lose our mind. It's like, Pierre, speak truth to power, and then it gets all watered down because it's got to sell in Quebec and Eastern Canada and far Eastern Canada.
Yeah, and a lot of people say Poilievre is controlled opposition. I think Aaron O'Toole is controlled opposition. We're actually going to do a bit of a deep dive on Poilievre later this week. That being said, I think he wants to change, but in Canada, there's so many communists and socialists that in order to make a big tent organization where he could potentially even win not even a majority government, just when he's having to compromise a lot of his values. And people don't like it. And that's the big reason Alberta needs to separate. It's time to stop compromising with these communists and socialists and these Marxists.
And coddling them, too.
Yeah.
Because this is what the average idiot in Canada thinks. From Mr. Unshine Baby, quote, this Canadian politician just called America a direct rising military threat to Canada and demands urgent action. I'm not making this up. Canada has severe TDS, and it is one of the downfalls of its own making. And that's why Carney is there, and Carney is now making a lot of trade deals and a lot of kissing up to China.
Carney's not only repositioning China as the major trade partner for Canada, but he's becoming the leader of this globalist order within the EU, and he's getting the EU to pivot to China. It looks like the New World Order wants China to be the center of the world, not the United States. And
just to spite the United States.
I'm glad right now I'm living in Mexico, and it was a good decision because even though we're run by a leftist ideologue, at least she's aligning with the United States, potentially because she has to. She doesn't have the same kind of leverage, but I'm glad she is aligning with them because that should protect some freedoms. Alberta has an opportunity to do the same. Even if Canada wants to pivot towards China, Alberta and Saskatchewan can say, no, we're pivoting towards the United States and we're going to become our own country.
Today in Parliament, Canada's New Democrats will be requesting an emergency debate on the recent deeply concerning statements and actions by the Trump administration that have grave implications for the sovereignty and security of Canada. On January 3rd, President Trump ordered American forces to disregard international law and core principles of national sovereignty by attacking Venezuela, a United Nations member state.
A communist dictatorship, you idiot. You look like a
he
fat mouse.
He didn't win the last election, so he wasn't the actual leader of the country.
Following this act, President Trump stated that the U.S. would, quote, run the country, end quote, and specifically referenced Venezuela's oil reserves as a prime motivation for this assault. This aggression was followed by President Trump's announcement of the establishment of a Dunro Doctrine, considering the entire Western Hemisphere to be within the sole hegemonic control of the United States. President Trump and senior U.S. administration officials then expressed their intent to seize Greenland, an internationally recognized territory of Denmark, another UN member state, and importantly, NATO member.
Who wants to leave?
They justified this aggression by referencing Greenland's Arctic proximity, mineral reserves, and inadequate defense capacity. All of these actions and words have direct application to Canada. Indeed, they were graphically depicted in a photo from the Oval Office itself, superimposing the U.S. flag over a map of Canada.
And pause it for a quick second. And this, they know there's going to be a snap election in Canada in the first half of the year. They're preparing to make that election about Canadian sovereignty, pitting Albertans against the rest of Canada, pitting Donald Trump against the rest of Canada.
Again.
Yeah.
Elbows up
And
again.
this is that. They're laying the groundwork for that.
It is clear that Canada faces serious economic, political, and military threats from the Trump administration. These actions and statements constitute a new and troubling U.S. approach to security and constitute non-adherence to international norms. They follow repeated and continuing threats made to Canada since Donald Trump became president. Taken together, these developments have urgent, pressing, and profound implications for Canadian security and sovereignty.
Okay, if you align with the U.S., you're going to be a profitable country. Canada should be one of the most profitable countries in the world. They've hamstringed themselves with not being able to access their natural resources, but their relationship with the United States has been a great relationship. Both countries have prospered immensely. Now, what they don't like is Donald Trump's rhetoric, but are you going to be under China's sphere of influence or America's? If you're under America's, even if you don't like their rhetoric, you're still going to maintain your freedoms. You're still going to maintain a lot of things, and you're going to be continuously be able to be prosperous. And if you actually start accessing your natural resources, you could potentially be a world power. That being said, if you align with China, they're going to grape you and talk nice to you. So, oh yeah, we're going to go with the person that's going to talk nice to us, but grape us. That's what you're looking at with China.
But actually implement policies that would dominate the country way more than the partnership with the U.S. ever would. And this is the fear-mongering that is allowing that to happen while Canadians clap about it and seem happy about now aligning with a communist country. If they wanted to become a superpower, then they have to make the steps to actually do that. But since they're so weak and they have hamstringed and weakened themselves so much as a country as well by bowing down to both the king and the Commonwealth, well, then you cannot be a superpower. And it's up to you if you want to do the easy route with the U.S. and the actual friendly one, but you're too offended by all the words that Donald Trump says, or going with a communist country that wants to essentially take over and conquer you.
Well, again,
and already almost has.
Well, again, if Alberta does separate and Trump helps them out economically and allows them to stand on their own 2 feet, they're ideologically aligned with the United States already in a lot of ways. It would be a good trade partner to have. And that also takes the wind out of a lot of the sails of the Canadian government when it comes to these other separatist movements. They're no longer going to be able to say, oh, Canada wants to take Alberta or take Saskatchewan. If the United States helps Alberta stand on its own 2 feet, which I think it will, it's going to help Saskatchewan to stand up next and then separate. And then Alberta can help Saskatchewan and then potentially Quebec. But Quebec's a different story.
Alberta and Saskatchewan try to become their own, like a country.
Well, if Saskatchewan and Alberta became its own country, potentially BC could join them. And that would be a huge economic bloc.
Yeah.
Problem is there's a lot of liberals in BC.
Yes.
Okay.
But let's see, communist solution that will only cause more problems because, of course, Canada. From Shazi or Shatsi, quote, solution to unaffordable groceries, cut a one-time GST check, that's a tax check, and call it help. People aren't stupid. They know this buys weeks of food, not a future. Food inflation in Canada is double than in the U.S., even with their tariffs. Too little competition, too much regulation, and not enough people caring to actually fix it.
Well, they know a snap election's coming up, so they like to make these big payoffs in these $1,000 checks or $2,000 checks. They're trying to buy votes here. This does not actually solve the problem. They have the highest food inflation in the G7. Carney said, judge me on the grocery prices. He didn't say, judge me on how much payoff checks I'm going to give you. That's number one. But number two, There's a bigger solution to this, and that's for Canada to focus on a couple strategic food products, maybe wheat, strategic things that are staples of the diet, and maybe subsidize those, but open up the market to American farming, because the food prices are so much cheaper. If that food can come across the border, that would instantly fix grocery prices in the grocery stores without tariffs. The problem is Canada has huge tariffs on the United States, which a lot of people don't know about.
The GST grocery rebate announced, some people suggesting this is not really going to do enough. What are your thoughts on this to sort of try to get the cost at least down a little, or is this kind of just window dressing for a different audience?
Yeah, sometimes people are smarter than I give them credit for. The response to this is not what I thought it would be. Listen, somebody wants to hand you hundreds of dollars, almost $1,000. You think people would be grateful, and I think many people are, but the response I'm getting from most people is, yeah, well, that'll help for now, but this has been a problem for years.
Yeah.
How do you help it long term? It doesn't feel like the government has a winner here. They need to fix the problem long term, because, yeah, this will buy you a couple of months of groceries, but we all know the price of food. If you live in Toronto, you're talking about this week, probably the snow, but traffic first. I bet you second is not tariffs. It's traffic and then affordability at the grocery store. The price of food is outrageous. And, you know, I think at least there's a nod to some money going to the long-term problem. But he's not very clear, the Prime Minister, about how he wants to spend this. And that's where the problem really lies. We have a lack of competition. We have too much regulation. Those things need to be fixed long term. You know, the Prime Minister was bragging in Davos that we've broken those trade barriers interprovincially, but it's not true. There's still many interprovincial trade barriers, and they add to the cost of food. So people want real long-term solutions here.
Yeah, and, you know, handing them a GST check for groceries, a
And
one-time
you can
thing,
leave it
seems
there,
like a band-aid
and it's
solution.
not going to be the only check he hands out. If there's a snap election, he's going to be handing out checks to all kinds of different groups, low-income groups, specialty groups, First Nations groups. I mean, the money's going to be going out. They're going to try to buy another election like they did with the last Trudeau election, like they tried to do with the first Carney election. That's just the Liberal game plan. And then they're going to try to pin Donald Trump against Canada. And as Mark Carney elbows up, I'm the savior. You're not able to get a trade deal. The USMCA, that deal is going to be coming up possibly around the time the snap election is called. So it's going to be very interesting. And if they're renegotiating that USMCA at that time, it's not going to go good if Canadians are trying to campaign off the back of a US-Canada rivalry.
And Mexico is going to end up actually benefiting because Mexico has been cooperating, even though they kick their feet and say, no, we're not. But yes, they are.
They are.
But it's insane. And even when we just first moved here to Mexico, and I'm from here, going to the grocery store and seeing the difference from Vancouver, downtown Vancouver food prices versus here was, I mean, insane.
Oh, it's absolutely.
And how much money you spend. And there's, I mean, months where you were like, well, we were both like, should we pay rent or should we go to the grocery store today? Because
yeah, I've lived all over the United States now. I've lived in Mexico. I mean, I lived a lot of different places. No place had food prices as high as Canada. And there's no long-term fix for it, but there are solutions right there, and it's called the United States. You just need to take a lot of the tariffs down on the food prices in the United States.
Well, let's move on to another failure that is Europe. And hamstringing themselves as well with a lot of things that they're trying to do. But starting off with, from Concerned Citizen, quote, "We do not need to look at what superpower we are aligned with. I would rather be looking at China right now than we would America. At least we know what's going on with China." You know even less what's going on with China. Oh, God.
And this is the sentiment of a lot of Canadians as well as a lot of people in the UK and the EU. And they're going to put a lot more of this propaganda out, and they want to realign with China. We're seeing that in real time. Donald Trump is the excuse they're going to use. Why? Because they like that system better. They want a communist system where the elites control the people rather than the people controlling the elites. And Alberta is the perfect example of this, where it changes the paradigm. It puts the people in control again, saying, if we don't want to be part of the nation, we'll leave and we'll stand on our own 2 feet.
There has come a time where we do need to look at what superpower we're going to essentially look at. You know, I think I'd rather be looking at China right now than I would America. At least China, we know what's going on with them. America, it seems like Trump, especially, every day something wacky comes out, you know, whether that's buying Greenland or the stuff happening with ICE. So personally, I'd much rather be in China's bed at the moment than America's.
It's also insane to hear a British person that looks actually British, a British person say, we need to decide what superpower to align with. You used to be the superpower that conquered the world, and now look what you've done to your country, and look how little power you've left yourselves with to go decide which one you want to pick.
Well,
you used to be the pick.
The issue here is the United States provided everything for the UK and the EU. They had to make very little contributions, and they very often didn't meet those the minimum military quota for spending. I mean, they created a welfare state in the EU and in the UK off the back of the United States' military spending and a lot of the trade they were doing with the United States, putting tariffs on the United States, but the United States not putting the same amount of tariffs back. They got rich and they stuffed it into the elite's pockets and built a welfare state. And now they want to go run and make China their new daddy. But that welfare state isn't going to fly if China's their new daddy.
And we also see the plans that they have for their citizens. And now that they want to apparently align with China, they also want to align with more China-style insanity that is surveillance of their own people. Because this came out recently, and this is insane. And be forewarned, I'm sure a lot of other countries are going to start implementing this. From Basil the Great, quote, British police have the ability to download data from your phone without a password. In the next stage of authoritarian hell we are to endure, British police are proud to show you just how easy they can see everything on your phone without login details.
Yeah,
there is no
it's
privacy.
time to start just leaving your regular phone at home and having a little burner phone that you...
But even if it's at home, they probably can already get into that data too. They just don't tell you. It starts without sound. It says this is the type of machine being used by police to extract data from cell phones. This is what it can find.
Call logs, chats, cookies, device notifications, emails, instant messages, passwords. You can see deleted conversations on encrypted apps like WhatsApp and Signal. Millie's deleted web browsing history. Hopefully nothing too embarrassing. Contact information for everyone she's spoken to, the locations of all her calls. And you can see other people's phone numbers. So it's got more.
Can you see their messages to you?
Yeah.
So the police are getting information about people that you've contacted who have nothing to do with the arrest that might have happened.
Exactly, and who may have contacted me securely about work using Signal. I think the most worrying is that this can happen on arrest, even when charges are never even brought. It can also happen to witnesses and to victims. There seems to be nothing clear in terms of deletion, so it seems like the police can effectively do what they want when they obtain your phone.
It's a scary amount of information. It's also so useful for the police. This is going to be so important in investigations.
Of course. The trouble is, at the moment, you don't need a warrant to obtain any of this. There has to be a degree of involvement of checks and balances that says, well, do you know what, in this case, it's not necessarily proportionate. You don't need this person's phone.
Yeah, they're just running over basic freedoms. They're taking away freedom of speech with the amount of arrests they're doing in the UK and the EU. I mean, it's absolutely insane what's going on there. They're openly converting to communism the way I see it.
And the security state that a feminized society brings, I mean, we just heard her say, well, but this is going to be so useful for investigations. Like, I mean, yes, it would be. It would also be easier for them to know absolutely everything about you and be able to control your life. But that's not the kind of world you want to live in. Even though it sounds great that security is at the forefront, that's when citizens' freedoms and rights, everything gets stripped from them.
Yeah, I think these countries are going to have to, Trump is going to have to break them in order to wake them up. Meaning Eastern Europe is standing strong. Eastern Europe might have to break off from the European Union and make a new alliance and align with the United States. Alberta, Saskatchewan also need to break off from Canada, align with the United States economically. And that will really put a hurting on the rest of Canada and make them wake up, saying China can't save us, because China won't be able to save Canada no matter, they just don't have the amount of money. The American economy, and we've highlighted this for the first time, is growing at a greater rate than the Chinese economy. Things are beginning to shift. What Donald Trump is doing is actually working, and it's only been 12 months.
Let's see Keir Starmer say the complete opposite and bend down and take it, essentially. From concerned citizen, quote, I want to take advantage of China and all you have to offer, Keir Starmer said. In China, working on issues like climate change together is precisely what we should be doing. Yes, because China cares so much about climate change.
Climate change and these green issues are the handcuffs they put on the EU, on Canada, and the United States for a long time to cripple their economies while they grew their own. Now that Donald Trump took off those handcuffs, literally 12 months later, they're growing faster than China. Everybody couldn't figure out why China was growing so fast. It's because China was funneling money into these NGOs, and these NGOs were passing legislation so the United States, Canada, and the EU couldn't access their own natural resources.
And this might sound like deja vu from Mark Carney, but UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has gone from calling China a national security threat and a risk to UK democracy, same as what Mark Carney said a few months ago, to sucking up to President Xi Jinping in just a few weeks. Same as Carney.
Yeah, every time we talk about China, we get censored, or like the videos get throttled. That being said, I'm not going to back down from the issue.
President Xi, on behalf of the entire delegation, thank you for such a warm welcome to China. As you have said, this is the first visit by a UK Prime Minister in 8 years. To my mind, that's been far too long. I'm very pleased to be the Prime Minister that comes here for the first time in 8 years.
I'm sure he is.
Not, in fact, my first visit, but my second visit to China. So it's very good to be back here. I'm delighted that I have a very strong delegation with me, all my top advisors, top ministers, but also a big delegation. We have nearly 60 great British businesses and cultural organisations travelling with us. And these businesses, these organisations represent the best of Britain. And what they want and what I want is to grow and expand in China, taking advantage of all that you have to offer, whilst delivering growth and jobs for the British people back at home. And it's with the British people in mind that I am here today. I made a promise 18 months ago when we were elected into government that I would make Britain face outward again. Because, as we all know, events abroad affect everything that happens back in our home countries, from prices on the supermarket shelves to how secure we feel. Our international partnerships help us deliver the security and prosperity the British people deserve. And that is why I've long been clear that the UK and China need a long-term, consistent and comprehensive strategic partnership. That's what we discussed when we met in Rio in the G20. We are G20 economies. We're fellow members of the United Nations Security Council, and our trading relationships support hundreds of thousands of jobs in each other's countries and have gone on for a very, very long history. China is a vital player on the global stage, and it's vital that we build a more sophisticated relationship where we can identify opportunities to collaborate, but of course also allow a meaningful dialogue on areas where we disagree.
Who's filming?
That is the only way to make progress.
Okay, you can leave it there. And I don't think he could have.
Nice
I don't think he could have sucked any more Chinese dong harder if he tried. That was absolutely ridiculous. Like, my God, the direction they're going to take that country. And Keir Starmer also came out with a statement and said he doesn't care how low his poll numbers go. He's not stepping down. He's going to be the one that brings a lot of this in, and his poll numbers are going to suffer for it. They know Reform UK is going to go in. They're going to push hard for this alliance with China.
They're all going to kiss the ring, and it's very clear now. Especially, again, if for some reason it's always the Commonwealth countries, the UK, Canada, Australia. They're all bowing down and kissing the ring. Well, but it's interesting also that in China, and we've been kind of reporting on it, and I mean, we're reporting on it now, whatever, there's been turmoil within Xi Jinping's cabinet and what's going on there too. So what's going to happen?
Well, Donald Trump, a lot of them don't like Donald Trump because he's being truthful. He's being honest. He's being a realist. And he's saying, you need to stand up on your own 2 feet. See how we're treating the American economy. We're taking the handcuffs off on these green policies, these manufacturing policies, a lot of these policies. You need to do the same. You need to make an ideological shift. The elites in those countries are absolutely unwilling to do it. They would rather run to China and be subservient than stand on their own 2 feet. And that's the thing. The United States is willing to back a lot of these countries, but they're going to have to first stand up. They could become superpowers if they were self-sufficient and then they stood together. They're not willing to do that. They would rather have a daddy, and that daddy, they don't like one that talks bad to them, so they're now leaving Daddy Trump and going to Daddy Winnie the Pooh.
Yes, because discipline is love, and that's what Trump is trying to do, but they don't understand it because, again, communist liberals never understand the importance of discipline.
It's outrageous how fast the UK and the EU are running into China's arms along with Canada. At least with Canada, there is Alberta, Saskatchewan really having a separatist movement where the harder Canada runs to China, I think the more support the separatist movement gets.
And also concerning, and again, during this ridiculous meeting from Mary Knopfel, it says the UK and China are launching a new partnership to make it easier for British companies to operate in China, especially in services like finance, law, healthcare, education, and consulting. Basically, the stuff Britain still makes money on, which is very reduced. And they could make more money, but they don't want to manufacture anything. The problem is China always needs, whenever a company is installed within China or has headquarters in China, there has to be a CCP member with his own office making the final decision. So what does this mean for British companies?
Well, it's not so concerning what's actually they said here. It's what's not said here. What does China get in return when they go into Britain? We already know they're building that underground headquarters, which is supposed to be
under their embassy.
It was supposed to be their embassy. It looks more like a military base the way it's going to be designed in the center of London. That being said,
they also own all of the UK's or London's energy grid already.
Well, that being said, a lot of the things they were asking Canada for, it seems like small things, but they want their social media. They want intelligence gathering to be given both ways. So when they ask for something, the Canadian government won't give it to them. That's really insidious, especially considering Canada already gets intelligence from the U.S. and has cooperation. So that would be a way for China to kind of get U.S. intelligence from Canada.
China is also giving Brits visa-free travel for stays under 30 days. Lucky them. Business trips and tourism, no paperwork circus. The UK is now in the same bucket as France, Germany, Japan, etc. with a source from the UK. So you can go take a trip to China and probably stay there.
Okay, and let's go into the last story in the EU before we go into Latin America.
From Sky News, quote, British citizens will not be able to travel to China without needing to get a visa. The government has confirmed visa-free travel will be for trips up to 30 days. And why might these be beneficial?
Breaking news coming from China now. The Chinese and UK governments have confirmed that there will be visa-free travel for Britons visiting China for under 30 days. There's a few other lines about services as well, going on to say that the UK and China will conduct a feasibility study to explore whether to enter negotiations towards a bilateral services agreement. Adding in...
Yeah, right now you get visa-free travel into China. China's going to say, oh, we give you visa-free travel for the last 12 months. Now you need to give it to our citizens. Otherwise, we're going to take away this economic policy, which is going to hurt you. Then the UK does that, and then they can just flood spies into the UK without any visas.
Conquer the UK.
Addition to that they will launch a new partnership to expand the UK's world-leading services sector in China. And if agreed, it would lead to the establishment of clear and legally binding rules for UK firms doing business in China. Like I say, we're also hearing that China has confirmed visa-free travel for Britons visiting the country for under 30 days.
Okay. And if we have any comments, let's read the comments and then go into Latin America.
Don't think we do. Hold on. I think we had one more story for the UK.
Oh, okay.
From Commute, Stephen Bartlett says, Revolut founder Nick Storensky moves to the UAE. UK loses about £3 billion in potential capital gains tax. That's roughly the annual income tax from 450,000 average UK taxpayers. And yes, we are seeing a flight of the wealthy and the wealth in the UK and a lot of these other countries, similar to what's happening in California, but just in a bigger scale, because of the taxes and all of the socialist communist policies and legislation that they continue to impose, because eat the rich, then the rich leave, and then your normal regular citizens cannot eat either because there's no jobs.
On that point, the founder of Revolut leaving the UK, Nick Storensky, I think his name is, estimates say, credible reports say, that because he's leaving, there's going to be a £3 billion potential loss of capital gains tax that he would have paid had he not absconded to the UAE. Yeah. Now, to put this into more stark terms, what that means, I then did some research and I was looking at how many people it would take to pay that $3 billion, how many average taxpayers it would take to pay that $3 billion that we lose by him leaving. And it says roughly 450,000 average UK taxpayers, because the average UK taxpayer pays about £7,000 to £7,500 a year. So very simple math, 3 billion divided by 7,000 equals 430,000 people. So in plain English, that billionaire's potential tax bill is equal to the entire income tax of a mid-sized UK city for 1 year, because that person decided to leave.
Congratulations, you tax the rich. Congratulations. Now 500,000 people have to pay more tax.
Yeah, and wait till that's just one person. Imagine when businesses and corporations started to leave. Rolls-Royce builds their jet engines. That's where they make the majority of their money, not from their cars. And they're moving that manufacturing to the United States. Imagine how much tax loss that is. I mean, the EU and the UK just don't understand the Trump theory of lower taxes means more wealth for everybody.
But because communism, socialism, well,
it creates jobs. It creates jobs. It creates a lot of things. And they like to regulate and fine. I mean, the amount of fines they give U.S. tech firms is absolutely insane. And then rather than use that money, they stuff it into their elites' pockets and make a welfare system. They could make their own tech sector with the amount of money they're fining the U.S. tech sector. But the EU does not like to be self-sufficient. They outsource their energy to Russia, their manufacturing to China, their military to the United States, and then they ask, why aren't we a superpower?
They decided not to be. And Trembriggs says, I'd consider visiting China. I've never had the urge. I've never really had the urge to visit any Asian countries, really.
Well, I would have before I had this show, but I'm definitely getting arrested if I go into the UK or China now.
I was telling Rafa, one of our subscribers, one of our first subscribers, he said, oh yeah, now we probably can't go into the UK or London anymore. And he said, don't worry, you don't want to, it's disgusting. So I agree with that. It's not like I want to.
Yeah, I don't mind. I wouldn't mind visiting I can still go, I guess, go to Japan. I would mind going to Japan.
But I have no urge.
Well, in Japan, the Japan economy is really suffering. I remember when I was young, it cost a lot of money to go to Japan and nobody would ever travel. Now they're suffering, but they have a lot of the same culture. They haven't been flooded by immigrants yet. They're trying, but the new prime minister is doing a good job. I wouldn't mind seeing Japan.
I want to go to Italy again.
I got my Italian pasta over there. That's enough for me. It takes 3 times as long to cook, though. Maybe it's because it doesn't have glyphosate.
Glyphosates. It's probably because it's denser. It's similar.
I'm denser.
Yeah, you are denser. But let's go to where we are right now, Latin America. Is there anywhere in Latin America that you'd like to visit?
I'm here. Mexico City is fine with me.
Should go to Chile. Because Chile and Argentina, for some reason, I'm sure there's a reasoning as to why, but they feel a lot more European than Mexico, Colombia, the more northern countries in Latin America. I don't know why.
All right, let's go into the first story here.
Anybody knows, let me know in the chat. Speaking of Mexico, Mexican billionaire who swore he'd never Mexican billionaire who swore he'd never pay just paid 10.4 billion pesos, his first installment in a $2 billion tax bill that was imposed on him by the current corrupt government and the former, which is the same party, corrupt government.
10.4 billion in pesos. He has a $2 billion, I think, U.S. Tax bill, so he's got a lot more to pay. That being said, this is...
I'll say his name quickly. Ricardo Salinas Pliego. Here they call him Uncle Richie because he's really rich.
And the reason we're talking about him is I believe he is going to be the United States choice for the next president of Mexico. He's probably going to have to get a party to pick him up here. It will most likely be the PAN party, I'm willing to bet. I think he's paying off his tax bill here, so he can kind of get rid of any scandals kind of surrounding him when he runs for president. They don't want him running for president and saying, oh, he's trying to be president so he doesn't have to pay his taxes.
And we did see Ricardo Salinas Pliego just 2 weeks ago go to the U.S. and he had already been invited to several parties at the White House and also golfed with Trump. And he's kind of involved in politics, but he's never been a politician. He would be, I guess, Mexico's closest answer right now to a Donald Trump type. He's more libertarian, as many more conservatives here in Mexico and Latin America are. There's no hard right conservatives, I think, at all, other than maybe Cast, but that would be even pushing it. So he might be the answer. He is probably the pick, at least for.
And a lot of liberals actually like libertarians, and a lot of liberals are fed up with the Morena party here. Mm-hmm. So the fact that he's not hard conservative could really play in his advantage. He was also seen with Scott Bessent and a lot of the economic heavy hitters in the United States. So did he come up with this money himself? I don't know. I think a lot of money is going to be flowing into his campaign through the United States, but Mexico desperately needs the change.
And with this money that he just paid, he did also, while he was in the U.S. the last time, presented a complaint about the Mexican government with the International Court of justice or whatever. So I mean, I think that was also part of what moved this.
Okay, and let's head into Venezuela now.
From our novel, Venezuela opposition leader Machado tells Rubio she wants to return home ASAP. Maria Corina Machado met with Secretary of State Marco Rubio and told him straight up she wants to head back to Venezuela as soon as possible.
Okay, you can just play the video there.
You're doing the tapping thing.
Well, sometimes you like to read the whole book.
Because I like to give, you know.
Yeah, the beginning is fine.
Well, I have told the Secretary of State that I want to go back to my country as soon as possible. Certainly, there are important meetings and agreements that we're working on.
And she would do herself a big favor to just speak without smiling for a lot more often. I've only seen one video where she didn't smile and she spoke and she seemed normal. She comes off as like central casting out of a horror movie or something. It just looks off when she smiles and speaks and she doesn't want to put the smile away.
I will say that is how Venezuelans talk.
I've seen her talk once where she didn't smile and she came off as normal. Yeah. I don't necessarily like her, and what she says at the end is kind of concerning here.
Abroad, and as soon as I finish working on those issues, I want to go back. I think no one has faith in Delcy Rodriguez. What she is she has run out of options. Everybody knows what this regime is all about. We're talking about criminals. They have killed people intentionally. They had made a third of our population leave our country and flee. Well,
she's calling the current regime criminals. She's made the population flee. And if she goes in there, what that means, she's going to rally a populist movement to arrest all the military hierarchy, all the former people that were in power, and that will cause chaos within the country. This typically happens within a color revolution. When you take out the current regime, you put a new regime in there, the new regime starts arresting the old regime, and you get guerrilla armies and all kinds of other things. Trump has been able to stabilize the country because he took out the head and left the regime in there and a lot of the structure in there. And that's why the country's been able to function. If you put her in there right now, especially now that she's kind of shown her hand that she probably wants to arrest everybody, it's going to cause chaos within the country.
But I will say again, I mean, yes, she looks even creepier, I think, because of whatever work she has done. But Venezuelans do like talk and smile. And it's, especially when they're angry, they smile even more for some reason.
Well, at the end of the speech there, she stopped smiling and she looked a lot more normal. And it was because she was getting angry because she's talking about the regime that she wants to arrest. I agree, the current regime probably did a lot of bad things, but you can completely destabilize the country and a lot more bad things will happen in a destabilized country.
Speaking of regimes, from Government Accountability Institute, quote, Mexico operates 53 consulates in the United States. Britain has 6, China has 7. What are they doing? Meeting with Democratic activists to defeat Trump, running migrant TV, calling ICE brown shirts, organizing violent anti-ICE protests. Mexican senators live in America and represent illegals in Mexico's parliament. This is warfare. And yes, Peter Schweitzer has come up with a book and he has been promoting it all over the place. And this, I'm surprised more people didn't actually know about this because a lot of those organizations like Lucha, like Monarch, like the ones we always hear that are funneling money and helping illegals cross, are also supported by the Mexican government and the Mexican consulates in the U.S.
You have to realize here in Mexico, it's not like a regular government. It's shared power with organized crime and cartels. And then you have the government, and a lot of the organized crime is integrated into the government. The government is cooperating immensely with the U.S. administration right now. That being said, the organized crime syndicates that have a hold of a lot of these politicians are doing exactly the opposite. Surprisingly, though, Canada is causing a lot more headaches for the United States than Mexico is at this point.
Look at Mexico. When I was on your show last week, Steve, I read a couple of quotes from Mexican officials saying, we've got 40 million Mexicans in the United States. We are slowly retaking the territory that was taken from us. That was from a senior official who works for the President Sheinbaum of Mexico. Or a quote from Mexican senators, and I could read dozens of them, saying the exact same thing, that mass migration is a form of warfare, immigration warfare against the United States to reclaim sovereignty over portions of.
And yeah, these are all real quotes coming from Mexican senators and high up officials. You can't have people saying that. the United States has been blessed with immigration from Mexico because the moral foundation of Catholicism really aligns with a lot of the value systems of the United States. So they haven't had a lot of problems with their immigration like the European Union has with mass migration of Muslims. That being said, you can't talk about we're retaking back the country.
Well, the thing is, in Mexico, AMLO, who is the founder of the Morena party, which Claudia Sheinbaum was then selected to be president for, he is a communist and he has a lot of the very same Marxist talking points as many other communist leaders, where it's oppressor versus oppressed. So he has continued with this dichotomy of both the indigenous rights peoples, kind of like in Canada, but also by, for example, saying that Spain should apologize. And he has been on this campaign about Spain apologizing and also about overtaking the U.S. because it's our territory, even though we sold it to pay our debt. So that's where this is coming from.
The American Southwest, Texas, California, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah. They're talking about a dozen states. And this is not just sort of like, people riffing. They actually have a structure designed to encourage political activism and a radical political activism by migrants living in the United States, and it's working. They set up something in 2024 called Migrante TV, Migrant TV, funded by the Mexican government, operated by the Mexican government. And what Migrant TV does is it beams over social media messages specifically for migrants living in the United States. In 2024, it was Kamala Harris is great. Donald Trump is a Nazi. When Donald Trump won, the coverage has been, here's how you defeat ICE. Here's how you fight ICE. ICE are a bunch of brown shirts. Donald Trump is a bigoted racist who hates you. So they are actively trying to radicalize migrants that live in the United States, the Mexican government. They also have this network of 53 consulates in the United States. Massive number. Great Britain and China have 6 and 7 respectively. Mexico has 53. And these migrant officials are getting involved in our politics. They met with Democratic Party activists in 2024 on how to defeat Donald Trump. And they're also getting involved in organizing these violent anti-ICE protests. And on top of that, Steve, they also have these elected officials. Think about this. There are Mexican senators and members of their Chamber of Deputies, their Congress, who live in the United States, who go to Mexico City, sit in their parliament, and their job is to represent Mexicans who are living in our country. And these individuals are also going around organizing these violent protests. I would note that there's a consul
there. And I will say this, because the bigger threat is definitely Mexico, because the cartels and the way they're integrated into the United States. The thing is, Trump was very aware of this threat, and he's able to put enough leverage on the current Mexican president where he's getting enough cooperation where he's able to shut down a lot of these threats. The Canadian threat, on the other hand, he's getting virtually no cooperation, and money is really flowing in very insidious ways into the United States, which is very much harder to track and know what's going on. A lot of the stuff Trump is wary of Mexico. He's aware, and he's approaching it on day one.
And for example,
and even Kash Patel said, yeah, we've been addressing the Mexico issue in cooperation with the Mexican government, and that's why it hasn't had a snowball effect.
But for example, with the senators that he mentions that live in the U.S., there have been, for example, they've had their visas revoked, they've had their houses, some of them revoked as well, because of the cooperation, not just with the migrants, but specifically with the cartels. And a lot of lists have been popping up. Surprisingly, most of them are from the Morena party, which is Claudia Sheinbaum's party. But that is also another piece of leverage that the U.S. has been able to use with the whole Mexico situation. And Sheinbaum, even though Sheinbaum continues to say that we're a sovereign nation, we're not going to cooperate, behind the scenes, there's clear kneeling by Claudia Sheinbaum for Trump.
Yeah, the United States just has way, way too much leverage over Mexico. They're going to get in line, and I think that's what he was hoping Canada would do. It's surprising that Canada is really backstabbing the United States and realigning with China. Mexico is not doing any of that. The problem with Mexico is they don't have control over all their political units, meaning organized crime has a big heavy-handed say on what happens in Mexico.
Yes.
Okay, let's go into the last story in Latin America, and then we'll get into Asia.
Because recently, a few days ago, the White House said that Trump says, I had a very productive telephone conversation with President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico. We will be speaking again soon and ultimately setting up meetings in our respective countries, said President Trump. And right after this, Claudia Sheinbaum came out to say and to reiterate that we're going to send oil to Cuba and that we're a sovereign nation during her morning conferences. However, she quickly had to retract all of that because of the conversations that she had actually had with Trump, where now even the citizenry is starting to notice, even the reporters within her morning conference are starting to notice that she's trying to put up a very different face to the one that is actually doing the negotiations with Trump, where Trump is just telling her what to do, essentially.
Yeah, ultimately, I think the United States is going to want to pick winners and losers when it comes to cartels. And I think they're going to try to do that through Sheinbaum and possibly roll the ultimate winner up into the government and legitimize them, like what happened in Russia, kind of. I think that's the United States' plan. Is it going to work? I don't know, but they're definitely getting a lot of cooperation from this administration. And I think that was the right move overall. Okay, let's go into Asia if we have no comments.
No, we don't.
Okay.
And Asia. I mean, basically the whole show has been Asia, but more.
Well, China's, there's a lot because we typically cover a lot of Western countries, and they're all realigning with China. It seems like, or at least trying to realign with China.
China has had its footprints all over everywhere. From also Government Accountability Institute says, quote, a Chinese spy literally designed the EB-5 visa program in the 90s. Her name was Maria Tsai, and a Senate committee exposed her years later.
Okay.
Now 90% of people. Okay, you don't want me to read.
Well, they're going to say all that.
Yes.
So this is a visa program that on the face of it, I think sounds good. And there probably is some good that have come of it. It's the EB-5 visa program. This is where if you're a foreign national and you invest $1 million in the United States, you create a certain number of jobs, you can get permanent resident status in the United States. Okay, I mean, in theory, we want people to invest in America, whatever. But of course, the system has been massively abused. And it turns out that the person that lobbied and got that bill passed in the early 1990s was a lady named Maria Tsai, who was later outed by a Senate committee as a Chinese spy. So that's the person that kind of pushed and got this thing passed. The program is dominated by Chinese nationals. Over to 90% of the people that are getting permanent resident status through this are Chinese nationals. And Don, they brag in China about getting permanent resident status here, but not actually living here, which are kind of like, well, then why even get it? Well, part of the reason is if you have permanent resident status in the United States, you can't legally vote in an election, but you can legally donate to political campaigns. And that's what a lot of these Chinese investors are doing. They're not living here. They're not part of our culture. They're not part of our society. They're not becoming American in any way. They're staying in China, and they are donating tens of millions of dollars to political campaigns here. I probably don't need to, you're not going to be shocked by this. Those donations tend to break 80-20 Democrat Republican. So there's a clear political...
I'm shocked that the majority would be voting for Democrats from essentially an enemy nation looking to destroy us from within. I'm really shocked to hear that, Peter.
Yeah. So, so this is another example where they have manipulated or weaponized our immigration system. Again, in theory, okay, we want people to invest in America. We want, if they want to be part of the American dream, we want, but they have taken that program and bastardized it in a way that is now a strategic weapon they are using to manipulate our political campaigns. And that's what I mean by weaponization of immigration. That's why we need to wake up to the fact it's not just about jobs and crime in our streets, although that's very important. It's about something bigger. It's about these political networks that they are now operating in our country, trying to undermine America.
I thought he was going to let Donald Trump Jr. talk there, but it's great to see Trump Jr., whether even if you don't like him, I know he can be kind of off-putting for a lot of people, but him and a lot of the other Trump family members have their own podcasts, or they do interviews on other people's podcasts, and they're able to, like this gentleman right here was able to kind of educate him on this very specific visa that the Chinese government is taking advantage of, so that can work its way back up into Donald Trump directly. And this is how Donald Trump's able to kind of transition and move and really have his ear to the street, and people really feel like they're connected to the administration at points with certain issues. He's able to pivot when other administrations literally live in a bubble and don't know what's going on.
But funnily enough, and then speaking of administrations that live in a bubble, this is exactly almost what happens in Canada too. Mm-hmm. Like that's what they do.
Yeah.
They don't live there, but they have extraordinary amounts of influence over the whole country.
Yeah, well, because the Trump family is so big, it's very interesting to see how they are integrated into the social media space. And this really allows access and information to kind of flow freely. The issue is going to be if a conservative does win the next one, Marco Rubio doesn't have those kind of connections in there, and neither just JD Vance. I might like JD Vance, but he doesn't have this huge extended family that's in social media that is going to have a way to work it back and forth.
I mean, maybe he could continue because he's friends with them, so maybe they could, strengthen the relationship.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think JD Vance would really be an extension of the Trump administration.
Let's see.
This was crazy.
From the fish's mouth. From Defiant L's quote, man instructs liberals to prepare for revolution and target people who have the American flag outside their home.
The fact that he's stuttering, you can watch his eyes reading the statement. I don't believe this is AI. I thought this was shocking.
If you have American flag in front of your house, swipe away. Do not watch this video. Okay, there's about 10% Americans want the revolution. It's too early, but it's not too early to prepare for the revolution. Let me share with you a business plan to prepare for the revolution. Right now, it's 2026. If some households still have an American flag in front of their house, that means those people are supporting the American system. They are your enemy, and they will be your enemy when the revolution starts. Before you eat the rich, you need more resources and weapons. Where to get all these resources and weapons? Get it from those households who got American flag in front of their house. Okay, so you guys also need to have a community.
He's going to take our resources.
I mean, that's essentially how the Communist Revolution in China went.
And they're very, because they don't understand English, they're very forward and there's no nuance. And revolution and stuff like that is commonplace in Chinese history. So they talk about it very forwardly.
And set up a website and ask all your members to take picture of every household who got American flag.
They already do that.
And upload those information to your website, address of each household. When the time comes, you guys can use this information as evidence to eat them first. Eat them, God will support you. Buddha will support you. Eat them with no regret, okay? So this is my business plan for you. When the time comes, some household, they will pay you a lot of money just to take off those information off your website.
I really hope it's a joke.
I hope they do that, because you come to those American flag households first, they're going to end you real quick, and your little revolution is not going to rise fast at all.
But I mean, today and I showed a small clip of it on Tim Pool's culture war debate thing with Andrew Branca, but also Cam Higby was there, and I always forget the name of the other journalist, independent journalist.
Just continue with the story.
But they were saying that, yes, the Republicans and the right always feels like, oh yeah, I have all these guns and I'm going to be able to, take you out. The problem is the left is always already very organized. We're seeing it with the Signal chats. We're seeing it with the amount of community organization they have. So in a way, yes, one Republican could take out a few, but because they're so organized and the Republicans don't have that much and that large of a community that they can rely on if and when the revolution comes, they're actually not going to do as good as they think they are.
You're completely wrong.
I think watch... If you're interested, to watch the whole thing.
They're also contradicting themselves, because I know they've seen the same war game experiments that I've seen, because they've talked about it as well, and that's why I originally looked it up. Yeah, every time you war game left versus right, the right wins every single time, and it's not because of the amount of money they have; it's because of the military training they have, and they've gone back.
And they have a lot of military
life.
within them, but now we're seeing the levels of organization that the left actually has, and the support that they have from external sources and international sources.
The playing field right now benefits them because cameras are their guns, and they try to set up situations to sway the public. But if things actually get kinetic, they're done.
We'll see.
Okay.
Hopefully not, but
that's not going to happen anyway, because I don't think the United States is headed towards a civil war. I really think the UK or the EU would be the first to have that happen.
But speaking of civil war, let's go to the Middle East, whose flag I still haven't changed. But today it does have something to do, at least, with India. From Basil the Great, quote, the EU Council President reveals he's also an Indian citizen. Of course, I am President of the European Council, but I'm also an overseas Indian citizen. It's not a coincidence, as the EU has just signed a deal which will allow millions of Indian migrants into Europe. We talked about this on Wednesday.
Well, this is happening with all kinds of their politicians within the EU. Yeah. They don't have strict guidelines.
They're conquered land.
Yeah, I mean, Canada needs to watch out. The same thing's happening to them. The United States needs to make sure only citizens can run for office. Even school boards,
I'm the president of the European Council, but I'm also an overseas Indian citizen.
Proud of it.
Then, as you can imagine, for me, it has a special meaning. I'm very proud of my roots in Goa, where my father's family came from. And the connection between Europe and India is something personal to me. Also because we conclude today our trade negotiations. We relaunched at the latest meeting
Oh, actually, you can finish it. It's almost
that
done.
I had the pleasure to host in May.
This is on our last show we played. They had their historic trade agreement that they made between the EU and India, and man, we looked into it. They're going to basically be flooded with Indians into the European Union. The citizens don't want it. The elites now are really just taking off the mask and saying we're going to do what you want, no matter what you say. And I think they want to foment some kind of civil war within the country, so then they can implement a police state.
And well, we also know that the Europe is running out of babies and people and families.
The Europe?
Huh?
The Europe?
Europe is running out of babies and people and families. And instead of incentivizing their own citizens, their actual indigenous citizens to have more kids, they'd rather just import people that will do it for them.
Yeah, I kind of say one other thing, and that is, I was watching about AI today, and they were saying, well, there's no real products made from AI that are actually profitable, especially for the amount of investment. But we did report on the last show, Tesla actually shut down 2 of its car plants so they can actually start manufacturing robots in mass. If robots actually come out, they're going to have AI in them. That would be the first time I think AI would actually have its first profitable product. I don't like the whole idea on any level, but I think that's what they're looking for to make AI profitable as far as robotics. And even with the United States, if they're successful exiting a lot of these migrants or immigrants, they're going to have to rely on robotics in some way, shape, or form for a lot of these industries. And I think you're going to have a very similar problem with robotics. Robotics is now going to repress a lot of the wages.
Or I mean, UBI, but that's not a good idea either.
Why are you complaining about robotics? They're real Americans. They're America.
Yeah.
They were built
Let
in
them
America.
vote. Let them vote.
They're
Because
built in
we
America.
program them, so let them vote. That's literally what they're doing with illegals too. Let them vote because we programmed them. We brought them here. But we're going over to RUMBLE for the last few stories. Please do subscribe here on YouTube. It really does help us out a lot. We are trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. That's like our #1 goal right now. Thank you so much to everybody that has subscribed, and have a lovely rest of your weekend as well.
And thanks to all the Canadians that subscribed.
Yes.
I know we've been making a lot of Canadian videos. We're going to continue to focus on the Alberta separatist movement.
But during the lives, we do cover
everything.
The world. We try to, everything at least. So head on over to RUMBLE, same channel name. We'll see you over there in a few seconds.